What if your entire life was being shaped by one thing, your self-esteem? In the 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem by Nathaniel Branden, we get a powerful roadmap for building true confidence and inner strength from the ground up. In this video, we'll be going through all 6 pillars, practical, life-changing principles you can start applying today to improve the way you think, live, and show up in the world. So if you're into personal growth, mindset, or becoming the strongest version of yourself, you're in the right place. Make sure to like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss future deep dives like this. Let's jump in. Part 1. Core Concepts of Self-Esteem. Chapter 1. Self-Esteem, the mind's inner defense system. Let's face a truth we can't run from: self-esteem matters. Whether we choose to acknowledge it or not, how we view and evaluate ourselves plays a vital role in our lives. It's something we can try to ignore, perhaps by getting lost in work, entertainment, shopping, relationships, or even distractions like the news or social media. But no matter how we try to escape it, self-esteem continues to influence us from within. Self-esteem isn't just a feel-good concept. It's a fundamental psychological need. You don't have to understand it or even believe in it for it to affect your life, it just does. You can choose to explore its importance or stay unaware, but if you do the latter, you risk being a stranger to yourself, and that comes with consequences. Understanding what self-esteem truly means. When people talk about self-esteem, they often reduce it to a vague idea of self-worth or confidence. But there's more to it than that. Self-esteem, when fully developed, is the deep, internal experience that tells us we are capable of living our lives and meeting its demands. More specifically, self-esteem is made up of 2 key elements. 1. Belief in our ability to think and solve problems effectively, to handle the challenges life throws at us. 2. A sense of personal worthiness, the belief that we deserve success and happiness and that it's okay to pursue our desires and enjoy the rewards of our efforts. Later on, we'll break this definition down even further. But for now, it's important to understand this. Self-esteem isn't something we're simply born with or that we can instantly build through positive affirmations. It's not a gift, it's a lifelong achievement. The core dynamic of self-esteem. At the heart of self-esteem lies this truth: trusting your own mind and knowing you deserve happiness is its very essence. And this belief doesn't just sit in our minds, it drives our actions. In fact, there's a continuous loop between how we act and how we see ourselves. The more we believe in our abilities, the more we engage with life thoughtfully and persistently, and that, in turn, strengthens our self-esteem. On the flip side, if we doubt ourselves, we're more likely to check out mentally, give up easily, and act with less awareness, which then leads to poorer outcomes and confirms our doubts. If you believe in your thinking and your capacity to face challenges, you're more likely to engage actively and think critically. When your actions lead to good results, you reinforce that trust. But if you avoid thinking or act passively, your results suffer and your confidence continues to erode. How self-esteem affects effort and resilience. Self-esteem shapes how we deal with setbacks and obstacles. People with high self-esteem tend to push forward even when things get tough. They don't back down easily. Studies have shown that they stay committed to tasks significantly longer than those with low self-esteem. That persistence often leads to more success, which then boosts self-esteem even more. On the other hand, those with low self-esteem are more likely to give up or just go through the motions without truly committing. Their failures then reinforce their belief that they're not capable, creating a downward spiral. Self-respect and how others treat us. If you carry yourself with self-respect, you tend to expect others to treat you well, and most of the time, they do. People respond to the signals we send. But if you think poorly of yourself and allow disrespect or mistreatment, that often gets mirrored back to you. And the more you tolerate it, the more your self-respect suffers. So it's not just about how we feel, it's about how we live. Self-esteem allows us to navigate life with greater clarity, strength, and flexibility. Why self-esteem matters so much. Self-esteem isn't just about feeling good, it's about functioning well. It touches every corner of our lives. How we perform at work, how we interact with others, the heights we reach, the happiness we experience, the relationships we form. People with healthy self-esteem tend to be more rational, creative, open to growth, adaptable to change, honest about mistakes, and cooperative. On the other hand, poor self-esteem often shows up as defensiveness, fear of change, rigid thinking, dependency, or aggression. Why? Because how we see ourselves affects how we see the world and how we move through it. Ambition and growth. Those with high self-esteem seek out growth, not necessarily just in career or wealth, but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. They crave meaningful experiences and challenges. And as they pursue and achieve those goals, their self-esteem grows even more. Meanwhile, those with lower self-esteem often avoid challenges, sticking to the safe and familiar. But that very choice prevents growth and weakens their confidence further. The ripple effect in relationships. Healthy self-esteem drives authentic self-expression. When you feel confident and secure, you're more open, honest, and clear in your communication because you trust your voice has value. Conversely, low self-esteem often leads to vague, evasive, or self-protective communication because you fear judgment or rejection. And this directly influences who we build relationships with. People are generally drawn to others who reflect their own self-esteem level. Those with high self-esteem tend to seek others who also have a strong sense of self. Meanwhile, individuals with low self-esteem often find comfort in those who share similar insecurities, though this can lead to toxic dynamics. Simply put, we tend to feel most at home with people who mirror how we feel about ourselves. The kindness connection. People with healthy self-esteem are more likely to treat others with fairness, respect, and goodwill. Why? Because they don't see others as threats. Their own inner sense of worth allows them to be generous and open. Contrary to the myth that being individualistic makes someone selfish or antisocial, research shows that a strong sense of self actually fosters cooperation, empathy, and kindness. It's easier to be kind to others when you already respect yourself. Self-esteem and happiness. Perhaps most powerfully, self-esteem is one of the strongest indicators of happiness. People who trust themselves and believe they're worthy of joy tend to experience more of it. In contrast, those with low self-esteem often struggle to find lasting satisfaction. Self-esteem is not a luxury, it's a psychological necessity. It's not built overnight, and it's not maintained passively. It requires awareness, effort, and intentional living. But when nurtured, self-esteem becomes a powerful force that strengthens every part of your life. Love and self-esteem, a deeper look at how we relate to ourselves and others. Let's talk about love. Not the fairy tale kind, but real, deep connection. One of the biggest obstacles to finding and maintaining fulfilling romantic relationships is an inner belief that we're not truly lovable or that pain is our inevitable fate. This fear often becomes a prophecy we unintentionally fulfill. When someone has a healthy sense of inner value, when they feel competent and worthy of love, they're able to approach relationships from a place of abundance rather than need. Love and kindness feel natural. There's a surplus of emotional energy to give, rather than a desperate search to fill a void. And because they trust themselves, they can trust that others might see and appreciate their worth too. This outlook shapes how relationships unfold, often creating a self-fulfilling cycle of mutual care and respect. But when that inner foundation is shaky, something very different happens. If someone feels empty inside, they're not really in a position to give love. They're more likely to seek out approval, validation, or rescue. They might not value people for who they are, but rather for how those people make them feel about themselves. This creates relationships based on need and fear, not true emotional connection. Without a strong sense of self, many people enter relationships trying to prove their worth, or they unconsciously choose partners who affirm their worst fears. This explains why some relationships feel like they're doomed before they even begin, not because love is unrealistic, but because the self-respect needed to sustain it is missing. We often hear that you can't love others if you don't love yourself. But here's the second half that people rarely talk about. If you don't feel lovable, it becomes almost impossible to accept love. Even when someone does express genuine care, it doesn't land, it doesn't make sense internally. You might think they must be mistaken or this can't last. It's like pouring water into a leaky bucket. Even people who walk around with inflated self-talk saying, "I'm amazing, I deserve the best," can still be undermined by hidden feelings of unworthiness. These inner doubts sabotage intimacy. Without realizing it, they create tension, push others away, or destroy trust just to validate the belief that they'll always be unloved. Sometimes this shows up in the choices people make. They may repeatedly fall for partners who are unavailable, unkind, or disinterested because deep down they expect to be abandoned or mistreated. On some level, being with the wrong person confirms what they already believe about themselves and life. It's less about love and more about proving a painful story to be true. Here are a few real-world examples to show how this plays out. A woman wonders why she always ends up with partners who don't treat her well. As a child, she was blamed for her father's absence, told it was her fault he left. Now, as an adult, she unconsciously seeks out relationships that reinforce the belief that love will always lead to loss. A man marries a woman who genuinely cares for him, but nothing she does is enough. He constantly doubts her love. Eventually, when she convinces him she's truly devoted, he starts thinking maybe she isn't good enough for him. He leaves. Then, the same cycle repeats with someone new. Another woman tells her husband how inferior she feels compared to other women. When he reassures her, she mocks him. The more he tries to show his love, the more she rejects it. Eventually, exhausted, he walks away. For takeaway? I always knew I wasn't lovable. People often choose being right over being happy. If you believe you're destined for sadness, joy feels like a mistake, something too good to be true. You might even destroy a good thing just to restore the feeling that your inner story is accurate. One man, for example, falls in love and feels real happiness until anxiety creeps in. Joy feels foreign, out of sync with who he thinks he is. So he finds ways to undermine the relationship bit by bit. For many people, the real challenge isn't finding love, it's accepting it. It's the courage to stay in happiness long enough to realize it's safe. Self-sabotage often shows up just when things are going well, like a voice whispering, "This won't last," or "You don't deserve this." But here's the good news, you can challenge that voice. You can consciously choose not to act on it. Even one day at a time, learning not to derail your own joy builds your inner strength. Talk back to those limiting beliefs. Ask where they come from. Question their logic. Reclaim your adult voice and remind yourself that happiness isn't dangerous, it's natural, and you're allowed to have it. Self-esteem in the workplace. Hidden saboteurs of success. Let's shift to another realm where self-esteem plays a huge role, the professional world. Low self-esteem doesn't just affect our relationships, it can subtly or dramatically undermine careers too. Imagine someone getting a long-desired promotion. Instead of celebrating, they panic. I'm a fraud, they think. I'm not cut out for this. That fear keeps them from putting in their best effort. They may show up unprepared, second-guess decisions, or alienate coworkers. Eventually, their worst fear becomes reality. They get let go. And they say to themselves, I knew this was too good to last. In another scenario, a team leader hears a brilliant idea from a junior colleague, but instead of being excited, they feel threatened. They suppress the idea, not because it's bad, but because they're afraid of being overshadowed. This kind of insecurity blocks innovation and growth, not only for the individual, but for the whole organization. Sometimes people feel threatened by colleagues for irrational reasons. One man, for example, struggles to accept his female boss's authority. Rather than face his insecurity, he turns his discomfort into disrespect. This is often rooted in outdated beliefs about power and identity. When someone needs to feel superior to others based on gender, status, or background, it's a glaring sign of low self-worth. Even intelligent, high-performing individuals aren't immune. A brilliant department head hears that a top scientist is joining his team. Rather than feeling inspired, he feels replaced. Despite evidence of his success, he spirals into fear and eventually quits, sabotaging his own career. There are countless examples: a consultant too afraid to deliver bad news, a promising employee who hides ideas out of fear of looking arrogant, a boss who insists on always being right. All of these behaviors are symptoms of self-doubt dressed in professional clothing. Insecure leaders, in particular, can be dangerous to team morale. They may insist on control, belittle ideas, or take credit for others' work. They stifle creativity and send a message that mistakes are not allowed. Ironically, they often ask why their team isn't more innovative without realizing they're the roadblock. Ultimately, this isn't about blaming or criticizing people with low self-esteem. It's about recognizing the quiet power it has to shape our lives for better or worse. Awareness is the first step. These patterns can change, but only if we're willing to understand where they come from and take responsibility for transforming them. Self-fulfilling prophecies are phenomena where our beliefs and expectations influence our actions, ultimately leading to outcomes that confirm those beliefs. In the context of self-esteem, both high and low levels can serve as catalysts for such prophecies. The influence of self-esteem on expectations and actions. Self-esteem shapes our perceptions of what is achievable and appropriate for us. These perceptions, whether conscious or subconscious, drive our behaviors in ways that often bring about results aligning with our initial beliefs. Educational psychologist E. Paul Torrance observed that an individual's vision of their future can be a more accurate predictor of their achievements than their past performances. This underscores the profound impact self-concept has on motivation and success. The cycle of low self-esteem and self-sabotage. Low self-esteem can limit aspirations and lead to self-sabotaging behaviors. An individual may achieve professional success but feel unworthy of it, leading to actions that undermine their accomplishments. For example, a person might engage in unethical behavior to match their success with their self-concept, eventually resulting in disgrace and ruin. This illustrates how a poor self-concept can dictate one's destiny, often in subtle ways. Self-sabotage at the peak of success. The conflict between achieved success and existing self-beliefs can lead to self-sabotage. When individuals surpass their self-imposed limits, anxiety may arise, prompting actions that prevent further success. For instance, a professional on the brink of a significant achievement might self-destruct due to the fear of surpassing their perceived capabilities. This behavior stems from the discomfort of exceeding one's self-concept. Real-life examples of self-sabotage. Consider the case of an architect who, nearing a major career milestone, experienced heightened anxiety. Believing he couldn't handle increased fame, he relapsed into old habits, lost the opportunity, and returned to a comfort zone of mediocrity. Similarly, a businesswoman's internal belief that women shouldn't be successful led her to make errors that harmed her business, reflecting how deep-seated beliefs can derail progress. Self-esteem as a fundamental human need. Self-esteem is akin to a basic need, essential for effective functioning. While lacking self-esteem doesn't lead to immediate death, it impairs one's ability to navigate life successfully. High self-esteem contributes to resilience, enabling individuals to face challenges with confidence and optimism. Conversely, low self-esteem can result in various issues, including poor relationship choices, career stagnation, and a pervasive sense of dissatisfaction. The fallacy of too much self-esteem. Some argue that excessive self-esteem can be detrimental, equating it with arrogance. However, true self-esteem is not about superiority over others but about self-acceptance and confidence. Individuals with healthy self-esteem don't feel the need to belittle others, they derive joy from their own existence and achievements. Therefore, the concept of too much self-esteem is a misnomer, often reflecting misunderstandings about its nature. The endless pursuit of enough. When self-esteem is contingent upon external achievements, individuals may find themselves in an endless chase for validation. No accomplishment feels sufficient, leading to chronic dissatisfaction. This cycle highlights the importance of cultivating intrinsic self-worth, where happiness stems from self-acceptance rather than external accolades. In summary, self-esteem profoundly influences our expectations, actions, and overall life trajectory. Understanding and nurturing healthy self-esteem can break the cycle of self-fulfilling prophecies, leading to more fulfilling and successful lives. A word of caution: understanding the complex role of self-esteem. While it's clear that self-esteem plays a pivotal role in personal well-being, it's equally important to acknowledge the dangers of overestimating its significance. Some modern writers, driven by enthusiasm, suggest that a healthy sense of self-worth is all that is needed to achieve happiness and success. However, the reality is far more nuanced. Self-esteem is undeniably crucial, but it is not a catch-all solution. It is not a substitute for other essential factors such as external opportunities, personal energy levels, intelligence, or the drive for achievement. For instance, the pursuit of success can be fueled by a negative force, such as the fear of losing love or status, rather than a positive and healthy drive for self-expression. A well-developed sense of self is undeniably necessary for well-being, but it is not sufficient on its own. Its mere presence does not guarantee fulfillment, and the absence of it often leads to anxiety, frustration, or even despair. While self-esteem can help individuals pursue their goals and navigate life, it is not a remedy for fundamental needs such as physical shelter or nourishment. However, possessing self-esteem increases the likelihood that one will be able to meet these basic needs. Self-esteem and Maslow's hierarchy of needs. In Maslow's widely recognized hierarchy of needs, self-esteem is considered a need that comes after the most basic survival needs, like food and water. While this view holds some validity, it's an oversimplification. There are instances where individuals will sacrifice their lives to preserve their self-esteem. Additionally, Maslow's idea that the need for acceptance is more fundamental than self-esteem can be debated. Ultimately, self-esteem is not a luxury, it is a critical psychological need. Its absence can impair an individual's capacity to function, signaling its survival value. Self-esteem in the modern world. In today's world, the value of self-esteem extends beyond psychological well-being. It has become a critical economic asset. In recent decades, we've witnessed significant shifts in the global and American economies. The U.S. has transitioned from a manufacturing-based economy to one that is driven by information and intellectual labor. This has altered the nature of work, demanding higher levels of education and skill, and creating an economy where innovation, self-management, and personal responsibility are more important than ever. This shift also requires psychological resources. Modern businesses need employees at all levels to possess not only specialized knowledge and skills, but also the capacity for independence, self-trust, initiative, and ultimately a solid sense of self-worth. Self-esteem is no longer just a psychological asset, it has become an economic necessity. The demands of personal autonomy. This need for self-esteem extends beyond the corporate world. Today's society gives individuals more freedom than ever before to shape their own identities, select their life paths, and determine their values. We no longer rely on traditional institutions like government, church, or large organizations to provide a clear path for our lives. With an overwhelming number of choices available, individuals are expected to make decisions and take responsibility for their lives. This autonomy requires a strong internal foundation, one rooted in self-esteem. In a world where there are virtually limitless possibilities, a healthy sense of self is essential for making conscious, informed decisions. Without it, individuals may easily be swept along by societal pressures or adopt external values that don't truly resonate with their core beliefs. To be successful and fulfilled in such a complex world, individuals must develop the confidence and inner trust to navigate the vast number of options they face. The challenge of choice and the role of self-esteem. The vast array of choices we face today can be both liberating and overwhelming. From religion and career to personal relationships and lifestyle choices, the freedom to choose has never been more pronounced. However, for those who lack a solid sense of self-esteem, the sheer magnitude of choices can be paralyzing. This is akin to the anxiety experienced by a person encountering an unfamiliar environment, such as a Soviet citizen entering an American supermarket for the first time. Without self-esteem, individuals may seek comfort in rigid ideologies, cults, or escapist behaviors as a way to cope with the overwhelming complexity of life. In fact, the growing prevalence of self-help movements, mutual aid groups, and a stronger emphasis on self-reliance in healthcare and personal responsibility reflect the societal need for a solid internal foundation. The lack of proper preparation for this environment, whether through upbringing or education, makes the issue of self-esteem all the more pressing. Entrepreneurial spirit and self-esteem. In today's world, the entrepreneurial spirit is not limited to business alone. It also applies to our personal lives. We are all, in a sense, called upon to be entrepreneurs of our own lives, constantly adapting, learning, and growing. With so many choices and decisions, we need to be grounded in our own values and self-worth to make the right choices. Whether it's deciding on our career paths, relationships, or personal beliefs, a strong sense of self-esteem is essential for navigating these decisions. In conclusion, the growing complexity of both the global economy and personal choices has made self-esteem more critical than ever before. In a world full of options and challenges, it is no longer enough to simply have knowledge and skill. A deep, intrinsic self-worth is necessary for managing the demands of modern life, and those who possess it are more likely to thrive in both personal and professional realms. Therefore, cultivating and nurturing self-esteem is not just an individual need, but a collective one in today's increasingly competitive and complex world. The concept of self-esteem, and in-depth exploration. Self-esteem is a complex concept that encompasses two interconnected elements. The first is self-efficacy, a deep sense of confidence in our ability to navigate life's challenges. The second is self-respect, which is rooted in the belief that we are worthy of happiness. While a person with high self-esteem may not always consciously recognize these components, they are integral to the experience of self-esteem. Upon closer examination, both are essential parts of what makes up self-esteem. 1. Self-efficacy, confidence in our abilities. Self-efficacy refers to the trust and confidence we have in the functioning of our own minds. This includes our ability to think, understand, learn, make decisions, and solve problems. It also involves being able to comprehend the facts of reality that are within our sphere of interest and needs. Essentially, self-efficacy is about self-reliance and trusting our ability to handle life's challenges using our reasoning abilities. 2. Self-respect, feeling worthy of happiness. Self-respect is the belief in our inherent value and entitlement to happiness. It is the foundation of self-worth, empowering us to assert our thoughts, desires, and needs appropriately. It involves feeling that joy and fulfillment are not privileges earned, but birthrights inherent to every human being. Self-respect allows us to confidently take up space in the world and demand the happiness we deserve. Together, these two pillars, self-efficacy and self-respect, form the bedrock of healthy self-esteem. Without either of them, our self-esteem suffers, no matter how many other positive qualities we might possess. If someone lacks confidence in their ability to face challenges or cannot trust their mind, they will likely experience a deficiency in self-esteem, even if they have other assets. Similarly, a person who feels unworthy of love, respect, or happiness, or fears asserting their needs, also has impaired self-esteem. 3. Self-esteem as a sense of control. The experience of self-efficacy provides us with a sense of control over our lives. This is vital for psychological well-being, as it positions us as active participants in our own existence rather than passive observers. On the other hand, self-respect fosters a sense of belonging and community, built on mutual respect and independence. It allows for meaningful connections with others, as opposed to feeling alienated or submerging ourselves mindlessly into a group. 4. The average level of self-esteem. While self-esteem can fluctuate, much like any psychological state, it is more useful to consider a person's average level of self-esteem rather than focusing on transient fluctuations. In other words, it's the general disposition toward oneself that defines self-esteem, not occasional feelings of adequacy or inadequacy. 5. Defining self-esteem. To put it succinctly, self-esteem can be defined as the disposition to experience oneself as capable of handling life's challenges and as deserving of happiness. This definition doesn't focus on childhood experiences, emotional consequences, or cultural influences. Instead, it pinpoints the core components of self-esteem: our capacity to cope with life and our belief that we are worthy of happiness. 6. The universal nature of self-esteem. When we talk about competence in this context, it's important to note that it's not tied to any specific culture or society. All human beings, no matter their background, face the challenges of survival and self-fulfillment. Competence in this sense is not a cultural construct but a universal requirement for life. The challenges of fulfilling needs and adapting to both the natural world and human society are faced by all, and our ability to confront these challenges is fundamental to our self-esteem. 7. The importance of a precise definition. It's crucial to have a clear, precise definition of self-esteem because it enables us to identify what exactly we need to nurture in ourselves and others. Whether in educational settings, workplaces, or therapy, understanding self-esteem's true nature allows for more effective strategies in building it. If the concept remains vague, the methods used to strengthen it will be equally unclear and ineffective. 8. The nature of low self-esteem. When a person has low self-esteem, they feel inherently inappropriate to life, not just in specific situations, but in their very being. They may feel unworthy wrong, or out of place as a person. On the other hand, people with high self-esteem feel confident in their ability to navigate life and believe they are deserving of happiness. 9. The root of our need for self-esteem. Our need for self-esteem arises from two key facts intrinsic to our species. The first is that our survival and success depend on the use of our consciousness. We need our minds to think, reason, and solve problems. The second fact is that this use of our consciousness is not automatic. Unlike other bodily functions such as breathing or digestion, our minds require conscious direction and effort. 10. The role of consciousness and free will. Humans are unique in that we have the power to direct our consciousness. This includes choosing whether or not to think, to focus, or to engage in awareness. Unlike automatic bodily functions, thinking requires an active decision. We can choose to use our minds to seek awareness or avoid it, a fundamental freedom that shapes both our lives and our self-esteem. 11. The impact of consciousness on self-esteem. The way we choose to operate our minds has a direct impact on our self-esteem. Decisions like focusing versus avoiding, thinking versus ignoring, and being honest with ourselves versus lying all influence our sense of competence and worth. Over time, our choices shape how we perceive our ability to cope with challenges and whether we feel worthy of happiness. 13. Self-esteem is not fixed. Self-esteem is not something fixed in childhood. It can change throughout a person's life based on the choices they make and the challenges they face. The level of self-esteem may rise or fall, and it is shaped by actions taken or avoided at various points in life. The choices that strengthen or lower self-esteem are ongoing and cumulative. 14. The role of choice in shaping self-esteem. Reflecting on personal choices, whether they are wise or regrettable, reveals how they shape our self-esteem. Every time we face a decision, whether to act or avoid, whether to confront uncomfortable truths or deny them, we impact our self-perception and sense of competence. These decisions are integral to building or eroding self-esteem. 15. Final thoughts. Self-esteem is closely tied to the choices we make, particularly in how we engage with our consciousness and moral responsibilities. We have the power to influence our sense of self through thoughtful decisions, self-awareness, and integrity. The process of building self-esteem is not about mere affirmation or feel-good exercises. It requires conscious effort and moral engagement with life. By understanding and developing the components of self-efficacy and self-respect, we can better navigate life's challenges and feel deserving of happiness. Through this, we strengthen our ability to live authentically, face difficulties with confidence, and maintain a strong sense of worth. Self-efficacy and self-respect, a path to healthy self-esteem. In this discussion, we explore two key components of self-esteem: self-efficacy and self-respect. Both of these elements are crucial for our overall well-being, and while they are distinct concepts, they are deeply interconnected. Let's dive deeper into each of them with a focus on how they shape our lives. Self-efficacy, confidence in our abilities. Self-efficacy refers to our fundamental belief in our own abilities to achieve goals and handle challenges. It's a sense of competence and confidence that comes from knowing we can learn what's necessary and take the necessary actions to succeed. Importantly, self-efficacy is not about being perfect or never failing. It's about having trust in our ability to think critically, problem solve, and correct our mistakes when they occur. Self-efficacy isn't about believing that success is guaranteed, but rather understanding that we can adapt, learn, and improve through effort. It's the conviction that we have the power to handle life's challenges as long as we stay committed to using our abilities and judgment to navigate them. This confidence in our thinking processes rather than in specific knowledge or skills forms the core of self-efficacy. It's an ongoing trust in our mental processes, which in turn empowers us to believe that success is possible through our own efforts. When we lack self-efficacy, we begin to doubt our ability to handle new or difficult situations. We may question, who am I to succeed? Who am I to overcome obstacles? This sense of self-doubt can be paralyzing, preventing us from moving forward. On the other hand, self-efficacy gives us the confidence to face challenges and believe in our capacity to learn and grow. Building self-efficacy, environment, and mindset. The roots of self-efficacy often lie in the way we are raised. A stable, rational, and predictable home environment fosters the belief that understanding and learning are possible. This early foundation supports our ability to trust ourselves and our mental processes. Equally important is our mindset, our refusal to succumb to helplessness. This mindset motivates us to persevere in the face of difficulties rather than giving up. Take, for example, a business executive who transitions into a new industry after many years in a different field. If this person has a healthy sense of self-efficacy, their confidence lies not in their past knowledge but in their ability to learn new concepts and skills. With this mindset, they are more likely to succeed in the new role. However, if they have low self-efficacy, they may be overly reliant on their past expertise and struggle to adapt to the new challenges. In the workplace, promoting self-efficacy can enhance performance, particularly when individuals are asked to take on new roles that require different skills. Encouraging employees to value consciousness, responsibility, and openness to change rather than just specific expertise can improve their ability to thrive in unfamiliar situations. The importance of self-efficacy in personal and professional growth. Consider a scenario in which an employee is promoted to a management position. If this individual lacks self-efficacy, they may struggle with their new role because they are overly attached to their old skill set and are afraid to embrace change. However, someone with a strong sense of self-efficacy will focus on the fact that they are capable of learning and adapting, which increases the likelihood of success in their new position. In this sense, self-efficacy is more than just an asset in professional life, it is a vital part of our personal development. The confidence to master challenges, whether in the workplace, in relationships, or in other areas of life, is grounded in our self-efficacy. It's not just about succeeding in specific tasks, but about knowing we can handle whatever life throws our way. Self-respect, the foundation of worthiness. Now let's explore the second vital component of self-esteem, self-respect. While self-efficacy is about our ability to perform and succeed, self-respect is about recognizing our intrinsic worth. It is the conviction that we are worthy of happiness, love, and success simply because we exist and make efforts in line with our values. Self-respect isn't about being perfect or superior to others, it's about the belief that we deserve to be treated well and that our well-being matters. This sense of worthiness is closely tied to our happiness and our relationships with others. Self-respect and personal boundaries. One way to understand self-respect is to examine how we interact with others. When we have high self-respect, we are more likely to assert ourselves, set healthy boundaries, and expect others to treat us with dignity. On the other hand, low self-respect can cause us to tolerate mistreatment or neglect our own needs, which further damages our sense of worth. For example, consider a successful professional who constantly feels the need to prove their worth through achievement. Despite their accomplishments, they struggle to enjoy time away from work or connect with their loved ones because they don't feel they deserve to be happy unless they are constantly performing. Their lack of self-respect prevents them from enjoying the fruits of their labor even when success is apparent to others. The role of moral choices in self-respect. Self-respect is also influenced by our moral choices. When we act in ways that align with our values and make us feel good about ourselves, our self-respect grows. However, when we act in ways that conflict with our moral compass, we feel diminished. This is why we often feel a deep sense of pride when we act in alignment with our values and a sense of shame when we fail to do so. The key to strengthening self-respect is to take responsibility for our choices and align our actions with our sense of personal integrity. Whether it's standing up for ourselves in professional environments or making ethical decisions in our personal lives, the more we act in ways that reflect our values, the stronger our sense of self-respect becomes. Self-respect, integrity, and happiness. Self-respect also connects deeply with our happiness and sense of fulfillment. If we don't feel worthy of happiness or success, it can be difficult to enjoy life's rewards. Self-respect gives us permission to experience happiness without guilt as we recognize that we deserve it. On the contrary, if we feel unworthy, we may sabotage our own happiness or refuse to accept the love and success that we are capable of achieving. Conclusion: the interplay between self-efficacy and self-respect. Ultimately, both self-efficacy and self-respect are vital for building a healthy sense of self-esteem. While self-efficacy gives us the confidence to learn, grow, and succeed in various areas of life, self-respect affirms our inherent worth and supports our right to happiness and fulfillment. The interplay between these two components shapes how we navigate the world and the challenges we face. Strengthening both is essential for a balanced and positive sense of self, leading to more fulfilling personal and professional lives. Self-efficacy enables us to trust our abilities to handle challenges and grow, while self-respect reinforces our inherent worth and entitlement to happiness. Both are foundational to a robust sense of self-esteem, and together they empower us to live more successful and fulfilling lives. Understanding pride versus self-esteem. Today, let's dive into the concept of pride, which often gets mixed up with self-esteem. While they share some similarities, they are distinct from one another. To clarify their differences, let's break down both concepts. Pride is a unique emotional experience, one that comes as a reward for personal achievement. It's not something to be ashamed of or something to suppress. Instead, it's a value to be celebrated and attained. In essence, pride is the emotional satisfaction we feel when we look at something we've accomplished. It's the pleasure derived from our own actions and efforts, acknowledging that we've succeeded at something we set out to do. On the other hand, self-esteem relates to our general sense of competence and intrinsic worth. Self-esteem is the recognition that we have the ability to achieve and handle life's challenges. It's about the confidence we have in ourselves to face what's ahead, while pride is the feeling we experience when we can reflect on what we've already done. To put it simply, self-esteem is about what we can do. It's forward-thinking, focusing on potential and capability. Pride, however, is about what we have done. It's reflective, acknowledging the accomplishments we've already achieved. It's not just about believing that we can achieve, but recognizing that we have achieved and taking satisfaction in it. Now, let's address a common misconception. Many people confuse authentic pride with arrogance, boasting, or bragging, but these are entirely different from real pride. Authentic pride comes from a deep sense of satisfaction, not from an inflated sense of superiority. It's not about trying to prove anything to others, but about enjoying the feeling of accomplishment for what it is. It's also not about pretending to be perfect. You can take pride in your achievements while acknowledging that you have flaws. It doesn't mean ignoring or denying our imperfections. Rather, it's about being able to enjoy the good we've done while accepting ourselves as a whole, flaws included. This understanding of pride is essential, especially when we consider that pride is the emotional reward for our efforts. It's not a vice that we need to eliminate, but rather a natural emotional state we should embrace as we strive toward our goals. In fact, when we think about pride in a broader, more philosophical sense, especially as a virtue, it can also represent moral ambition. It's about striving to reach our highest potential in life, living by our values, and aiming for personal growth in a meaningful way. This broader view of pride is something I discuss in more detail in the psychology of self-esteem. But does every achievement automatically lead to pride? Not always. There are times when people may feel accomplished on paper, but still struggle to feel the satisfaction of pride. One example that comes to mind is a story about a businessman I worked with. Despite building a successful company, he found himself feeling depressed and unsatisfied. After some reflection, we uncovered that he had always dreamed of being a research scientist, but had abandoned that dream to please his parents, who pushed him toward a career in business. Despite his success in business, he was unable to feel any deep pride in his accomplishments because they didn't align with his true desires and values. His depression stemmed from living a life based on external expectations rather than following his own passions. This story highlights an important lesson. Even when we achieve great things, we may not feel pride if our accomplishments are not in line with our authentic selves. It's crucial to ask yourself, who set your goals? Are they truly your own, or were they shaped by the expectations of others? Without aligning our goals with our deepest values, pride will be elusive. Furthermore, we must acknowledge that living authentically by following our own mind, judgment, and values requires immense courage. It's one of the most challenging and, at times, frightening paths to take. However, this is where self-esteem plays a critical role. It's not just about achieving things, but also about being willing to live life according to our true selves. Self-esteem is a call to tap into the inner hero within us, to be true to who we are and what we value. By embracing this deeper understanding of pride and self-esteem, we can begin to live more fulfilling and authentic lives. Achieving this alignment between our values, actions, and the pride we take in ourselves is key to building lasting self-esteem. This brings us to the essential pillars of self-esteem, which we'll explore in the next segment. Chapter 3. The manifestation of self-esteem. So, what does self-esteem really look like? It's not just a mental concept or a vague idea. It shows up in the way we behave, talk, and even move. While individual signs of self-esteem alone don't guarantee a high level of self-worth, When these behaviors and traits come together, it's a strong indicator of someone with healthy self-esteem. Self-esteem often reveals itself in our body language, facial expressions, and the way we interact with others. People with high self-esteem typically carry a certain ease about themselves. They express comfort in discussing their achievements and even their shortcomings, acknowledging both with honesty and directness, because they have a friendly relationship with the facts of their life. This openness extends to receiving and giving compliments, affection, and appreciation. A person with solid self-esteem feels comfortable accepting positive feedback and showing appreciation toward others without feeling defensive or uncomfortable. Additionally, high self-esteem shows up in one's ability to take criticism in stride and admit mistakes. This isn't about being perfect, but rather acknowledging imperfections and learning from them. Those with self-esteem are at peace with who they are, flaws and all. They're not afraid to own their mistakes and grow from them because they understand that errors don't define their value as a person. In terms of physical expression, self-esteem shows in how someone carries themselves. Their posture tends to be relaxed but confident. They may walk with purpose, but without appearing aggressive or overbearing. Their hands, arms, and shoulders move fluidly and naturally, reflecting a state of ease rather than tension. The face of someone with healthy self-esteem is typically relaxed, with alert and bright eyes, a relaxed jaw, and natural skin tone, unless affected by illness. This relaxed posture signals that a person is comfortable in their own skin and not hiding from themselves. Now, a big theme that stands out in the behavior of those with high self-esteem is relaxation. They aren't at war with themselves. Their comfort with who they are shows up in their body language and overall demeanor. On the other hand, someone struggling with self-esteem issues might exhibit chronic tension or discomfort, signaling an internal conflict or self-rejection. Self-esteem in action. When we talk about the effects of high self-esteem on behavior, we often see it closely tied to important traits such as rationality, realism, creativity, flexibility, and the ability to manage change. These qualities emerge naturally from a strong sense of self-worth. Rationality is one of the first things that becomes apparent. People with healthy self-esteem tend to think clearly and logically, processing information in a way that integrates facts and principles. They apply what they learn to new situations, always aiming to make sense of the world around them. Importantly, rationality doesn't mean rigid rule following. It's about being open to new insights and adjusting perspectives when necessary. High self-esteem helps cultivate a mindset that challenges contradictions and embraces learning, always striving for deeper understanding. Next, we have realism, which is about respecting facts and accepting reality as it is. A person with healthy self-esteem recognizes the difference between what is real and what is not. This reality-oriented mindset helps them assess their abilities accurately without falling into the trap of overestimating or underestimating their strengths. Intuition plays a major role too. People with strong self-esteem tend to trust their intuition, especially when making complex decisions. They've learned to integrate information at a subconscious level, allowing them to make quick, effective judgments. The ability to trust one's instincts grows from a history of success and experience, and when things don't work out, these individuals are willing to analyze their mistakes and adjust their approach. Creativity is another characteristic often associated with self-esteem. Creative people trust their own insights and ideas more than the average person. They're not easily swayed by external influences and often take time to cultivate and explore their creative thoughts. Their ability to value their own ideas and pursue them sets them apart from those with low self-esteem who may dismiss their ideas before they even give them a chance. Another critical element is independence. High self-esteem fosters a mindset that encourages people to think for themselves and take full responsibility for their actions. They aren't afraid to take the lead in their lives, pursuing goals that align with their values and seeking their own happiness rather than depending on others for validation or direction. Along with independence comes flexibility. A person with strong self-esteem can adapt to change easily. They're not stuck in the past or clinging to outdated ideas. Instead, they approach life's challenges with an open mind, ready to learn from new experiences. Rigidity and resistance to change often signal insecurity, whereas flexibility is the hallmark of someone who trusts their ability to navigate the unknown. Another trait tied to self-esteem is the ability to manage change. People with high self-esteem understand that change is a natural part of life, and they are not frightened by it. They respond to new circumstances with confidence, using their reality-oriented mindset to make quick, sound decisions. This trait is vital in today's fast-moving world, especially in the business realm, where being adaptable can make the difference between success and failure. A willingness to admit and correct mistakes is essential. Healthy self-esteem is grounded in a strong reality orientation, which means that these individuals are more focused on truth than protecting their ego. Admitting when they're wrong doesn't feel like a threat to their self-worth, it's an opportunity to grow and improve. In contrast, low self-esteem often manifests in denial or defensiveness, preventing personal growth and development. Lastly, benevolence and cooperativeness are natural results of strong self-esteem. When someone feels secure in their own boundaries and confident in their worth, they are more likely to treat others with kindness and respect. People with high self-esteem are also better able to collaborate and work toward shared goals without fear or resentment. This cooperative mindset reflects a deep sense of self-assurance, knowing that they don't need to compete with others to feel good about themselves. In the same vein, empathy and compassion are more common among those with high self-esteem. When a person is secure in their own sense of self, they're more able to connect with and understand others. This reflects the idea that how we treat ourselves influences how we treat those around us. To sum up, self-esteem isn't just a state of mind, it shows up in our behaviors, our interactions, and our ability to navigate life. It's reflected in the ease we experience with ourselves and others, in our ability to manage challenges, and in our openness to change and new experiences. Most importantly, self-esteem is a deep, inner confidence that we are worthy of respect, love, and success, just as we are. The illusion of self-esteem. When our self-esteem is low, fear can often manipulate us. We may feel inadequate in the face of reality, denying or repressing uncomfortable truths about ourselves or others. This fear can manifest as a fear of exposure, failure, or even the responsibilities that come with success. As a result, we may live more to avoid pain than to pursue genuine joy. If we perceive crucial aspects of reality as inaccessible, or if we approach life's challenges with a sense of helplessness, it can feel as if reality is our enemy. This mindset exacerbates the problem by sabotaging our thinking and effectiveness. For example, thoughts like, "Who am I to know?" or "It's futile to think or understand," only undermine our capacity to engage with reality and reason effectively. In such cases, a mind conditioned to avoid discomfort will struggle to find solutions or take action. Low self-esteem doesn't directly dictate how we think, but it does influence our emotional incentives. Our feelings either encourage us to confront truth or draw us away from it, shaping our capacity to think and act effectively. This is why building self-esteem can be challenging. It requires us to overcome emotional resistance and the belief that unconsciousness makes life easier. Until we challenge this idea, we cannot begin to grow in self-esteem. The danger here is becoming a prisoner of our negative self-image. If we define ourselves as weak, ineffective, or inadequate, our actions will reflect this self-definition. Although we have the ability to act against our negative self-image, the real challenge lies in our resignation to our perceived limitations. We may convince ourselves that we are powerless, avoiding risks and remaining passive in the process. Low self-esteem not only hampers clear thinking but also distorts it. When we struggle with poor self-regard, we may misinterpret our motivations, twisting them to fit negative self-judgments. This self-condemnation often feels appropriate, even when faced with unjust accusations. A person with low self-esteem may become paralyzed by feelings of guilt and inadequacy, unable to defend themselves effectively. The driving force behind poor self-esteem is not a lack of confidence but a deep-seated fear. The ultimate goal becomes escaping the terror of life, rather than living creatively or fully. Safety, not growth, becomes the overriding desire, and what we seek from others is not real connection but reassurance and forgiveness. a form of protection against moral judgment. The contrast between low and high self-esteem is evident in the way each responds to challenges. While low self-esteem avoids risks and seeks absolution, high self-esteem actively seeks new opportunities and challenges. This distinction forms the foundation for a healthy mind and spirit. A person's health can be gauged by whether they are motivated by confidence or fear, with fear signaling underdeveloped self-esteem. Pseudo-self-esteem. Sometimes we encounter people who appear successful and self-assured, yet secretly grapple with anxiety, dissatisfaction, or depression. They may project an image of confidence, but beneath the surface, they lack authentic self-esteem. How do we understand this phenomenon? As we've discussed, failing to cultivate genuine self-esteem often leads to anxiety, insecurity, and self-doubt. This internal discomfort may prompt people to evade their fears, rationalize their behavior, and construct a false sense of self-esteem. This is where pseudo-self-esteem comes into play. Pseudo-self-esteem refers to a false sense of self-efficacy and self-respect. It's a defense mechanism designed to reduce anxiety and create an illusion of security without addressing the real causes of low self-esteem. This false self-esteem is built on values that don't align with true self-worth, though these values may hold merit in other contexts. For instance, a large house may symbolize success, but it doesn't inherently reflect personal efficacy or virtue. Similarly, belonging to a criminal gang may offer a sense of security, but it doesn't foster authentic self-esteem. People often seek self-esteem through external measures such as material possessions, popularity, or social status. Instead of cultivating personal authenticity, they might prioritize fitting into the right groups, adhering to societal expectations, or accumulating accolades. Unfortunately, these pursuits cannot lead to true self-esteem. Self-esteem, at its core, is a deeply personal experience. It's about how we perceive ourselves, not how others perceive us. A person may be admired by friends or colleagues and yet feel worthless. They may project an image of confidence, fooling others, but secretly struggle with feelings of inadequacy. Winning accolades or fulfilling others' expectations doesn't guarantee self-regard. True self-esteem is about honoring who we are on a deeper level, not just living up to external standards. The tragedy of pursuing external validation. One of the great tragedies of modern life is that many people search for self-esteem in every direction except within themselves. They chase it through material success, public recognition, or the approval of others. However, the pursuit of external validation often leads to disappointment because self-esteem can only come from within. It is an internal state of being, grounded in self-awareness, responsibility, and integrity. While external validation can offer temporary comfort, it does not equate to true self-esteem. Success and admiration from others may make us feel good for a time, but they can't sustain long-term peace with ourselves. In fact, constantly seeking approval from others can lead to an unhealthy dependence, making us approval addicts and creating a fragile sense of self-worth. The real tragedy is that people often fail to recognize that external achievements or public adoration do not equate to genuine self-regard. They mistakenly believe that acquiring more recognition or success will bring them true peace of mind. This cycle of seeking validation can be exhausting and ultimately unfulfilling. The importance of internal support. The key to overcoming dependence on external validation is cultivating a strong sense of internal support. By developing internal certainty and autonomy, we reduce our need for constant approval from others. This internal foundation becomes essential for emotional independence and maturity. Innovators, creators, and entrepreneurs are often more independent and less reliant on the feedback of others. Their strength lies in their ability to follow their own vision, even when it takes them away from the familiar and into unknown territory. This courage to explore uncharted waters is a hallmark of their success. True genius, whether in art, science, or business, requires a certain amount of nerve and ability to act with confidence, even in the absence of external validation. This independence and willingness to take risks is often the secret to breakthroughs and achievements. By fostering this trait in ourselves, we can improve our chances of living a fulfilling and successful life. Chapter 5. Part 2. Internal Sources of Self-Esteem. The focus on action. Instead of starting with the external environment, we begin by focusing on the individual and their choices. At first glance, it may seem more intuitive to start with how family influences or biological factors shape a child's self-concept. But for the purpose of understanding self-esteem, we take a different approach. We begin by asking a more fundamental question: what must an individual do to build and maintain healthy self-esteem? What kind of actions need to be taken? What responsibilities do we, as adults, have in this process? The reason for this approach is clear. Without knowing the actions necessary to sustain self-esteem, we cannot fully understand what it means to have a psychologically healthy adulthood. And, in turn, we lack the criteria to judge what constitutes a positive or negative influence during childhood. For instance, our mind is our primary tool for survival and adapting to life. While a child starts out completely dependent, an adult's life revolves around the ability to think and reason. Thus, it is crucial that childhood experiences nurture independent thinking, self-trust, and autonomy. Conversely, when families deny reality or suppress the mind, they create significant barriers to the development of self-esteem. Why do we focus on actions when discussing self-esteem? The reason is simple: values in life, whether physical, mental, or emotional, require action to be realized, maintained, and enjoyed. Ayn Rand defines life as a process of self-generated and self-sustaining action. Our organs work continuously to support our existence, and our values, including self-esteem, are also dependent on action. Therefore, what truly determines an individual's self-esteem is the actions they take, based on their values and knowledge. Whether a child is raised in a nurturing environment or undergoes therapy, the actions they choose to take are the deciding factors in their self-esteem. Self-esteem, like all values, is a product of how we act, both mentally and physically. Internal processes are crucial here. An individual's thoughts and decisions drive their behavior in the world. To develop a healthy self-esteem, one must consistently engage in practices that support mental well-being. These practices are actions we engage in consciously, forming habits over time. The goal is not to take sporadic action, but to cultivate a consistent way of being, acting with integrity and mindfulness, whether in major life decisions or in everyday moments. Volition and its limits. While free will is a powerful force, it does not imply that we are omnipotent. Volition, our ability to choose, is influential, but it is not the only force at play. Various factors, both internal and external, can make it easier or harder for us to act in ways that promote healthy self-esteem. Some of these factors might be biological or genetic, such as a person's innate disposition toward resilience or anxiety. For some, focused thinking might come more naturally, while others may struggle with this ability due to inherent differences in brain chemistry or temperament. Additionally, there are developmental influences that shape our ability to exercise consciousness. Some individuals may face significant challenges in their formative years, making it much harder to develop self-esteem later in life. These challenges often require therapeutic intervention to overcome. Parenting and its limits. Research suggests that parents with high self-esteem are more likely to raise children who also have healthy self-esteem. Children raised in environments that are loving, respectful, and nurturing tend to internalize positive attitudes and are more likely to develop confidence in their own value. However, research also shows that this is not always the case. Some children raised in ideal environments still grow up with insecurities, while others who experience dysfunctional or abusive environments can still go on to live fulfilling and confident lives. These invulnerable individuals seem to have an extraordinary capacity to extract self-worth from even the most difficult circumstances. Despite these exceptions, it's generally true that a stable, reality-based environment makes it easier to think clearly and productively. Dysfunctional environments, whether in families, schools, or organizations, create barriers to effective thinking and decision-making and can severely hinder the development of self-esteem. Inner blocks. Even within an individual's psyche, there may be mental blocks that make it difficult to think clearly. Subconscious defenses or repressions can prevent us from confronting important issues. For example, if someone suppresses feelings of resentment toward their parents, they may find it hard to effectively address problems with their boss or coworkers. The deeper psychological issues may obscure the real source of difficulties, making problem-solving nearly impossible. Despite these inner blocks, an individual's self-esteem will ultimately be shaped by whether they choose to confront and resolve these issues. What we do know: Although there are many unknowns about the biological and developmental factors influencing self-esteem, we do know a lot about the specific practices that can either raise or lower it. For instance, a commitment to understanding ourselves fosters self-trust, while avoiding that effort can diminish it. People who live mindfully, actively engaging with their thoughts and actions, tend to feel more competent than those who live in autopilot. Integrity is key to building self-respect, while hypocrisy erodes it. These basic principles are often taken for granted, but they are vital to maintaining healthy self-esteem. While it may not be possible to rewrite our past or relive our childhoods, we can always choose to take action in the present to improve our self-esteem. This knowledge empowers us to make specific choices that positively impact our self-esteem today. The importance of understanding self-esteem. Understanding self-esteem is crucial not only for our own growth but also for supporting others in their journeys. Whether we are therapists, parents, teachers, or leaders, it's essential to know what practices foster self-esteem in order to help others thrive. But the process starts with ourselves. If we don't understand how self-esteem functions internally, through our own experiences, we won't be able to effectively guide others. It is vital that we embody what we wish to teach. There is a story that illustrates this idea. In India, when a family faces a problem, they often consult a local guru. One such guru was asked to help a family with their son's love for sweets, which was harming his health. Instead of immediately offering advice, the guru told the parents to return in 2 weeks. When they did, he explained that he needed time to resolve his own weakness for sweets before he could help their son. This story highlights the importance of internal self-awareness before attempting to guide others. Sentence completion work. Throughout this book, I will discuss the use of sentence completion exercises as a tool to strengthen self-esteem. This method, which I've been using since 1970, helps individuals uncover and explore subconscious thoughts, facilitating self-expression and self-healing. By completing sentence stems repeatedly, people can dig deeper into their feelings and beliefs, uncovering patterns that affect their self-esteem. This method not only serves as a powerful tool in therapy, but also as a way to test and refine our understanding of what actions and behaviors raise or lower self-esteem. In the following chapters, we will examine 6 practices that are fundamental to developing and maintaining healthy self-esteem. By incorporating these practices into our lives, we can make significant improvements in our self-esteem and overall well-being. Let's explore these 6 pillars in detail. The practice of living consciously, a guide to awakening awareness. Across a variety of spiritual and philosophical traditions worldwide, there is a recurring notion that many people are essentially living in a state of unconsciousness or sleepwalking through their lives. True enlightenment, it seems, is about awakening to a higher level of awareness. In the same vein, progress and evolution are frequently associated with an expansion of consciousness. Consciousness, in this context, is considered the highest form of life. The more advanced the consciousness, the more developed and evolved the life form is considered to be. From the emergence of consciousness on this planet, each life form has had a progressively more refined form of consciousness compared to the one before it. For humans, we often equate maturity and growth with an expanding vision, greater awareness, and higher consciousness. But why is consciousness so crucial? It is, in essence, the foundation for survival for all species capable of it. The ability to be aware of one's environment at some level and to respond appropriately is key to survival. In humans, this capacity is enhanced by the development of the mind, which has the power of abstract thought and concept formation. Humans, however, have a unique aspect of consciousness. It is voluntary. We have the choice to either seek awareness or avoid it. We can choose to pursue truth, or we can decide to ignore it. This means that we possess the extraordinary ability to either actively engage our minds and our consciousness or to suppress it, potentially at the cost of our survival and well-being. This ability to manage our own mental processes is both a source of pride and a potential burden. The mind is our tool for survival, and when we fail to use it properly, our sense of self-esteem and self-worth deteriorates. If we don't live consciously, if we don't engage fully with the reality around us, it leads to a diminished sense of competence and respect for ourselves. We cannot feel confident in our lives if we are operating in a mental fog. When we betray the potential of our minds by avoiding difficult truths, our self-esteem suffers. Let's consider some examples of this betrayal. I know I'm not putting my best effort into my job, but I don't want to face that reality. I know the business is facing serious trouble, but we've always made it work before. Maybe if I just ignore it, things will resolve themselves. My spouse is upset, but I refuse to acknowledge that it might have something to do with how I'm behaving. I know I'm not spending enough time with my kids, but I'll change one day eventually. These are just a few examples of how, through many daily decisions, we either choose to face reality or avoid it. These choices, though often unconscious, accumulate and form the foundation of our self-esteem, the reputation we have with ourselves. Living consciously doesn't necessarily require high intelligence. The ability to live consciously is available to all of us regardless of our intellectual capacity. It simply means striving to be aware of all factors influencing our actions, values, goals, and choices to the best of our ability and acting in alignment with that awareness. The betrayal of consciousness. It's important to highlight that consciousness is not just about awareness. It also involves translating that awareness into action. If we recognize that we've been unfair or hurtful to someone, but we procrastinate or make excuses to avoid addressing the situation, that's a betrayal of consciousness. Avoiding the reality of our actions or motives means we are not living consciously. True consciousness requires that we act on what we know even when it's uncomfortable. Clarifying potential misunderstandings. 1. Mastery and automatic actions. When we learn something new, like driving or speaking a language, we move from a state of full awareness to a more automatic, subconscious operation as we gain mastery. This doesn't contradict the principle of living consciously because once we master something, we no longer need to pay constant, deliberate attention to it. Living consciously doesn't require us to stay hyper-aware of everything we do. It means we are mindful of what we need to be aware of in the moment. 2. Mental states and purpose. Being conscious doesn't mean we are always solving problems. At times, we may choose to engage in activities like meditation or creative daydreaming, which require a different mental focus. In these moments, our consciousness is still present and functioning in line with the purpose at hand. For example, when playing with a child, the mental state required will be different from when we are engaged in focused work. The key is that no matter the activity, we are operating consciously and appropriately for the context. 3. Selection of awareness. Our minds cannot focus on everything at once. We must make conscious choices about what to focus on. If we are writing a book, for instance, we might block out the noise around us, but when we're driving, we need to shift our awareness to ensure safety. Consciousness involves choosing where to direct our attention, and this choice must be aligned with our current objectives and the demands of the situation. Being conscious means adapting our focus to the context, ensuring that we are fully present and aware in each scenario. Being responsible toward reality. Living consciously requires a deep respect for reality, the facts of our inner world, our needs, desires, and emotions, as well as the outer world. This contrasts with an approach that dismisses reality simply because we don't want to acknowledge certain truths. Living consciously means recognizing reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. Our feelings are important and can offer valuable insights, but they are not necessarily an infallible guide to truth. For example, our desire to buy something we cannot afford doesn't change the fact that we need to prioritize our financial responsibilities. Similarly, fear of a medical procedure doesn't alter the fact that it might be essential for our well-being. In summary, living consciously means being responsible for our awareness of reality. It's about not denying what is, even when it's uncomfortable. This kind of conscious living requires us to separate our subjective feelings from objective facts, applying reason and reflection to make informed decisions based on reality. By understanding these principles and practicing them in our daily lives, we can awaken to a higher state of consciousness where our actions, thoughts, and feelings align with the world around us in a responsible, meaningful way. Living consciously, understanding the specifics. Living consciously is an active, intentional way of engaging with life. It involves a deep commitment to awareness and a mindset that allows us to navigate our world with clarity and purpose. Let's dive deeper into the specifics of what it means to live consciously. 1. Active thinking over passive reaction. At the heart of living consciously is the practice of engaging our minds actively. This means choosing to think, understand, and make decisions rather than reacting mindlessly. We take responsibility for our own thoughts and actions. No one can make decisions for us or spare us from the necessity of thinking. It's something we must actively participate in to shape our own lives. A conscious mind takes ownership of its functions and enjoys the clarity it brings. 2. Finding joy in the function of the mind. Just like a child's natural instinct is to explore, learn, and enjoy their thinking process, living consciously means maintaining that enthusiasm for the mind's work as we grow older. A truly conscious adult continues to find joy in using their mind, understanding, and learning despite life's challenges. If we learn to overcome fear, stress, or exhaustion associated with thinking, we can find satisfaction and fulfillment in the process of continuous learning and expanding our awareness. 3. Being present in the moment while acknowledging the bigger picture. To live consciously also means being fully present in whatever we are doing. Whether we are having a conversation, playing with our children, or working on a task, it's essential to be fully immersed in the experience. However, living consciously doesn't mean being lost in the moment to the point of neglecting the larger context. It's about finding a balance between focusing on the task at hand and maintaining awareness of the broader context, ensuring our actions align with our bigger picture. 4. Seeking facts instead of avoiding them. Living consciously means actively seeking out the facts that impact us, whether they are comfortable or not. It involves curiosity and openness to new information that may require us to adjust our assumptions or plans. Denying facts or avoiding discomfort leads to stagnation, whereas actively engaging with reality keeps us empowered and adaptable. 5. Distinguishing between facts, interpretations, and emotions. A conscious individual is able to separate raw facts from their interpretations and emotional responses. For instance, someone may frown and our immediate assumption might be that they are upset with us. However, this interpretation may be wrong. Understanding that facts, what happened, interpretations, how we perceive it, and emotions, how we feel about it, are separate allows us to respond rationally instead of reacting impulsively. This helps us avoid making poor judgments based on faulty assumptions or emotional impulses. 6. Confronting painful realities instead of avoiding them. It's natural to avoid pain or discomfort, but living consciously requires us to confront the painful or threatening realities in our lives. Whether it's personal struggles, tough decisions, or inconvenient truths, a conscious mind does not shy away from them. Instead, we must be aware of our avoidance tendencies and actively work through them. This demands brutal honesty and self-awareness as we face difficult truths head-on instead of letting them slide by unnoticed. 7. Knowing where you stand relative to your goals. Another aspect of living consciously is being fully aware of your current position in relation to your goals. Whether it's a personal or professional objective, you must regularly assess where you are in your progress. For example, if your goal is to have a successful relationship, it's essential to evaluate where you stand. Are you both happy and resolving conflicts, or are there issues left unaddressed? A conscious person regularly checks in on their goals to ensure they're on the right path, making any adjustments as needed. 8. Aligning actions with purpose. Living consciously involves making sure that your actions are in alignment with your goals and values. It's easy to say one thing and do another. However, if your daily actions aren't supporting your core values and aspirations, it's time for introspection. Are you acting in ways that further your goals, or are you being distracted by other influences? Living consciously means paying attention to these misalignments and correcting them when necessary. 9. Actively seeking feedback to course correct. Living consciously involves being open to feedback from the environment and adjusting your actions accordingly. Just as a pilot makes continuous adjustments to stay on course during a flight, we too must constantly assess and recalibrate our path. Whether it's feedback from others or from the results of our own efforts, being receptive to this information helps us remain on the right track and avoid making mistakes based on outdated or incorrect assumptions. 10. Being open to new knowledge and changing assumptions. To live consciously, we must be open to new information and willing to change our perspective when necessary. Whether it's learning new skills, gaining deeper insights, or recognizing flaws in our previous assumptions, growth requires a willingness to evolve. This is not about stubbornly holding onto old beliefs, but being flexible and receptive to expanding our awareness and understanding as we continue to learn. 11. Acknowledging and correcting mistakes. Living consciously means owning up to our mistakes and taking the necessary steps to correct them. Denying mistakes or pretending they don't exist only compounds the problem. Confronting and correcting errors leads to personal growth and builds the foundation of integrity. A conscious person strives to be honest with themselves about their missteps and actively seeks to make amends. 12. A lifelong commitment to growth. Living consciously is a lifelong commitment to personal growth and learning. It's about constantly striving to expand your awareness, improve your understanding, and become the best version of yourself. This journey requires persistence and an openness to new experiences and knowledge. Those who live consciously are dedicated to learning and growing, both intellectually and emotionally, throughout their entire lives. 13. Understanding internal and external realities. Living consciously requires a commitment not only to understanding the external world but also our internal world. It's essential to be aware of our needs, desires, emotions, and motivations. By understanding these internal forces, we are less likely to be driven by unconscious impulses or external pressures. This self-awareness allows us to navigate life with clarity and authenticity, ensuring we make choices that align with who we truly are. 14. Understanding and evaluating your values. Finally, living consciously means being aware of the values that guide us. It's essential to reflect on where these values come from and whether they align with our true selves. If we adopt values that are not truly our own or are influenced by external forces, we may find ourselves living inauthentically. A conscious person regularly evaluates their values to ensure they are living in alignment with their true beliefs and principles. Living consciously is a process that involves awareness, self-reflection, and an active commitment to engaging with the world around us in a mindful way. By following these principles, we can create a life that is not only more fulfilling, but also more aligned with our true selves and our goals. Living consciously, the foundation of growth and self-mastery. 1. Forward-thinking leadership in business. A conscious leader doesn't just react to today's business landscape, they anticipate what's coming tomorrow. Maybe your marketing needs an overhaul. Maybe a once reliable manager isn't up to the task anymore. Or perhaps a product you thought was brilliant has suddenly been outpaced by competitors. A global shift, like new players from emerging markets, might demand a totally fresh strategy. Changes in customer demographics could mean that what works now won't work in a few years. How fast we identify these trends and how effectively we respond depends directly on how consciously we're operating. Leaders who work at a high level of awareness plan for future markets. Those operating on autopilot are often stuck in the past, chasing strategies that no longer apply. 2. Consciousness in personal relationships. Let's zoom in on something more personal. Imagine you want your partner to change a certain behavior. You keep doing things you think will help, but nothing shifts. Do you just keep repeating yourself, having the same conversation over and over? Or do you pause and ask, is what I'm doing even working? That moment where you choose to observe instead of react is the difference between living automatically and living consciously. 3. Staying the course through struggles. Every time we run into a challenge, whether it's in school, work, or our personal lives, we face a choice. Do we keep going or give up? Those who live consciously don't quit at the first roadblock. If one method doesn't work, they rest, regroup, or try a new approach. They don't throw in the towel or fall into meaningless action just to say they tried. As the famous story goes, Winston Churchill once gave a speech where all he said was, "Never, never, 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 never give up." Then he sat back down. Short, powerful, conscious perseverance in a sentence. Of course, there are times when it makes sense to let something go. But giving up should be a conscious, values-based decision, not something we do because we're too tired or too afraid. 4. Openness to learning and re-examining beliefs. A conscious mind is a curious mind. You can't grow if you assume you already know everything. And yet, many people do exactly that, clinging to old beliefs and rejecting new ideas. True growth doesn't require doubting everything you know. It just requires openness. Even if your assumptions are mostly right, there's always room for clarity, refinement, and deeper understanding. And sometimes we're just plain wrong. When we're too attached to our opinions, we stop seeing clearly. Conscious living demands a higher loyalty, not to always being right, but to seeking truth. Darwin, for instance, wrote down every piece of evidence that challenged his theory because he knew his brain would try to forget it. That's the kind of humility conscious thinking demands. 5. Lifelong learning, staying adaptive in a changing world. For most of human history, people believed that everything worth discovering had already been discovered. But today, human knowledge is doubling every decade. If we're not committed to lifelong learning, we fall behind fast. Think about how many people resisted learning computers or smartphones. Their fear wasn't about the tech. It was about feeling inadequate, threatened, exposed. A brokerage VP once admitted, "Learning to use a computer crushed my self-esteem. I didn't want to learn, but I had to." That discomfort? That's part of the growth process. Without it, there's no expansion of consciousness. 6. Awareness of the world around you. Consciousness isn't just internal. It's also about tuning into the world that shapes you. The environment, the economy, the political system, the culture you live in, all of these influence your choices and experience, often without your awareness. If you ignore these forces, it's like trying to sail a boat without checking the wind or the tide. Living consciously means staying curious, asking questions, noticing patterns, recognizing that you're not operating in a vacuum but in a complex system. 7. Knowing yourself on the inside. Now, here's where it gets real. You might know everything about science, politics, or religion. But if you're blind to your own needs, feelings, and desires, you're missing the most important knowledge of all. I've seen many people who are intellectual giants, and yet their personal lives are in chaos. Why? Because they've never taken the time to notice themselves. They dismiss their feelings, ignore their needs, and move through life on someone else's script. Living consciously means becoming fluent in the language of your own inner world. Asking, what am I feeling right now? What am I really trying to get from this situation? Are my actions aligned with my values? Is this life I'm living one I've chosen or one I've inherited? This isn't about being self-obsessed. It's about the art of noticing subtle signals in your body, your emotions, your behavior. What lifts you up? What drains you? Who's really speaking inside your mind, your true self, or a parent's old voice? 8. Values. Who's really driving the ship? Many of us live according to values we never chose. We absorb them from culture, family, media, and sometimes they quietly sabotage us. Like the person who equates their worth with money, or the woman taught that her value depends on who she marries, or the child who grows up around dishonesty and assumes this is just how the world works. If we never question the source of our values, they end up controlling us. Living consciously means stepping back and asking, where did this belief come from? Does it truly serve me? Is it even mine? 9. Addiction, escaping pain by dimming the light. One of the clearest signs of unconscious living is addiction, whether it's to substances, relationships, or behaviors. Why do people turn to these things? Not to feel better, but to feel less. To avoid the anxiety, sadness, or emptiness that's too painful to face. But numbing the pain also means numbing awareness. And soon, the temporary fix becomes a long-term trap. You can't engage in self-destruction without first turning off the lights. Consciousness becomes the enemy. Because if you really saw the cost, you'd have to act. Addiction thrives in darkness. Awareness is what breaks the cycle. The bottom line, awareness is everything. Living consciously isn't about perfection. It's about intention. It's choosing to stay awake rather than sleepwalking through life. It's being open to growth even when it's hard. It's noticing what's true both outside and inside yourself. The more you practice awareness, the more empowered you become. You'll make better decisions, build healthier relationships, set more authentic goals, and ultimately create a life that reflects who you really are. So ask yourself, am I acting out of habit or awareness? Am I learning or just defending what I already believe? Am I living someone else's life or my own? Because when consciousness leads, everything else follows. A personal reflection on conscious living. At various points in our lives, we've all experienced moments where we acted impulsively or without full awareness. We might reflect and think, if only I'd taken more time to consider, or if only I'd been more mindful. I recall my first marriage at the age of 22. Despite our youth, there were numerous signs indicating it might not be the right decision, frequent conflicts, different core values, and a sense that we weren't truly compatible. Yet, I proceeded driven by shared ideals, physical attraction, and a deep-seated desire to connect with someone. I feared loneliness and doubted another opportunity would come my way. I naively believed that marriage could resolve our issues. Had I asked myself if I were to approach this relationship with heightened awareness, what might I discover? I might have uncovered deeper insights into my motivations and reservations. Such a simple yet profound question could have been transformative. I didn't examine the emotions driving me toward marriage nor those signaling potential problems. I didn't ask the critical questions. Why now? Why not wait until we understand each other better? This lack of introspection led to a subtle erosion of my self-esteem as I unknowingly avoided confronting the truth. There's an exercise I now recommend to my therapy clients that I wish I'd known back then. Had I written daily, if I bring a higher level of consciousness to my relationship with Barbara and completed it with 6 to 10 rapid responses, I would have unearthed my deep-seated doubts and avoidance patterns. This practice often brings clarity, sometimes leading to improved relationships or, when necessary, their end. If Barbara had engaged in this exercise, she might have realized her own rationalizations. Whether we would have had the courage to act on these revelations is uncertain. However, once we become aware, continuing blindly becomes challenging. Awareness opens doors to further insights and growth. The connection between consciousness and the body. Wilhelm Reich's pioneering work integrated the body into psychotherapy, highlighting that repressed emotions manifest physically. He introduced the concept of body armor, where chronic muscular tension reflects emotional blocks. Reich identified 7 segments of the body that can become armored. 1. Ocular, around the eyes. 2. Oral, around the mouth. 3. Cervical, around the throat. 4. Chest, around the chest. 5. Diaphragmatic, around the diaphragm. 6. Abdominal, around the abdomen. 7. Pelvic, around the pelvis. These tensions restrict emotional flow and diminish consciousness. Therapeutic techniques aim to release these tensions, facilitating emotional and psychological healing. In the early 1970s, I underwent Rolfing, a form of structural integration involving deep tissue manipulation to realign the body. This experience heightened my sensitivity and awareness, enhancing my ability to perceive others' emotional states through their posture and movements. The key, as my therapist noted, was my active participation and awareness during the process. If we aim to live consciously, we must address the physical manifestations of repressed emotions. A body constrained by tension impedes the free flow of consciousness. Practicing conscious living, a daily exercise. A powerful tool for cultivating consciousness is the practice of sentence completion. This involves writing an incomplete sentence and rapidly adding multiple endings without overthinking. Each morning, write, "Living consciously to me means," complete this with 6 to 10 responses. Then, continue with, "If I bring 5% more awareness to my activities today. If I pay more attention to how I deal with people today. If I bring 5% more awareness to my most important relationships." In the evening, reflect by completing, "When I reflect on how I would feel if I lived more consciously. When I reflect on what happens when I bring 5% more awareness to my activities." Engage in this practice daily for 2 weeks without reviewing previous entries. At week's end, reflect with, "If any of what I wrote this week is true, it would be helpful if I." This exercise takes about 10 minutes daily and serves as a tool to manage attention and enhance self-awareness. Embracing the challenge of conscious living. Living consciously is both a practice and a mindset. It's natural to be more aware in some areas of life than others. Identifying areas where consciousness is lacking can guide personal growth. To address these areas, consider, the hard thing about staying fully conscious here is, the good thing about not being fully conscious here is, if I were to stay more conscious here, if I were to experiment with raising my consciousness 5% in this area. Reflecting on these prompts can illuminate obstacles and opportunities for growth. Remember, the practice of living consciously is foundational to self-esteem and personal effectiveness. Chapter 7. The Practice of Self-Acceptance, a Comprehensive Guide. Self-acceptance is foundational to self-esteem. Without truly accepting ourselves, it's nearly impossible to cultivate healthy self-esteem. However, while they are deeply connected, self-acceptance and self-esteem are 2 distinct concepts. Self-esteem is something we feel or experience, while self-acceptance is an active process, something we consciously choose to do. In essence, self-acceptance involves not being in an adversarial relationship with oneself. It's about making a commitment to affirm our own value regardless of circumstances. To understand this fully, we need to explore its meaning on 3 distinct levels. The first level of self-acceptance, being on your own side. At its core, self-acceptance means choosing to be on your own side. It's about being for yourself, supporting yourself, and valuing yourself simply because you are alive. This is more fundamental than self-esteem and is a pre-rational, primal act of self-affirmation that all humans are born with but can choose to ignore or sabotage. For some, this act of self-affirmation is so deeply lacking that it becomes impossible to progress with personal growth. If someone is self-rejecting at their core, no amount of therapy or self-improvement work will be effective until they address this deep inner conflict. Psychotherapists who fail to recognize this challenge often wonder why some clients don't seem to make progress after years of therapy. Self-acceptance is a refusal to enter into a negative, self-destructive relationship with yourself. It's a commitment to declare, I choose to value myself and stand up for my right to exist, even in the face of adversity. This basic self-affirmation is what forms the foundation for building self-esteem. It's the voice of our life force, the part of us that refuses to give up even when despair tries to overwhelm us. In the darkest moments, when we may feel like giving up, self-acceptance is what pushes us to ask for help, to call a therapist, or to resist self-harm. It fights for our survival even when we are overwhelmed by feelings of worthlessness. If this voice goes silent, self-esteem will be the first casualty. The second level of self-acceptance, embracing your inner experience. Self-acceptance at a deeper level involves acknowledging and embracing all of your thoughts, emotions, desires, actions, and experiences without denial or evasion. It's about owning your feelings, behaviors, and even your flaws rather than pretending they don't exist or pretending to be someone you're not. This acceptance doesn't mean that every emotion or action is justified or that you should always act according to your feelings. For instance, you might not feel like working, but acknowledging that you're feeling unmotivated allows you to accept it and still go to work, maintaining a clear mind. Often, when we fully accept our negative emotions, we are better able to let them go as they've been given their moment to be expressed and processed. The willingness to accept our emotions, even if we don't like them, is critical for personal growth. For example, if you're feeling anger, fear, or sadness, rather than denying it or pretending it's not there, you embrace the reality of those emotions. Self-acceptance means acknowledging what is true in the moment, even if it's not pleasant. Let's take a mistake. You might make it work. If you deny the mistake or refuse to accept it, you are cutting yourself off from the possibility of learning from it. However, by fully accepting the reality of the mistake, you can take responsibility, learn from it, and improve in the future. Refusing to acknowledge what is real about ourselves, whether it's our mistakes, our unconscious behavior, or our fear, prevents us from moving forward. When we're honest with ourselves and embrace the truth about who we are, we open the door to growth and change. The third level of self-acceptance, developing compassion for yourself. Self-acceptance also means having compassion for yourself. It's about being a friend to yourself, especially when you have acted in ways you regret or feel ashamed about. Compassionate self-acceptance doesn't deny the wrongness of our actions, but it seeks to understand why we acted the way we did. It asks, what led me to make that decision? What circumstances or thoughts made that action seem necessary at the time? This level of self-acceptance doesn't justify harmful behavior but seeks to understand it. By gaining insight into our motives and the context behind our actions, we are less likely to repeat them. We're not just blaming ourselves, we're asking questions and seeking understanding. This compassionate, non-judgmental approach fosters growth, allowing us to take responsibility for our actions without falling into guilt or shame. Imagine a close friend who's made a mistake. A true friend doesn't just condemn them. A good friend asks, what made you think that was okay at the time? What led you to act that way? This is how you can treat yourself with compassion. You can acknowledge your wrongdoings, take responsibility for them, and still treat yourself with care and understanding. This level of self-acceptance nurtures your growth while reducing the chances of repeating past mistakes. A simple exercise for building self-acceptance. To help individuals cultivate self-acceptance, I often recommend a simple yet powerful exercise. Stand in front of a full-length mirror and take a moment to really look at your face and body. The key here is not to focus on your clothes or your appearance, but to focus solely on yourself. Notice how this makes you feel. Are there parts of your body or face that you feel uncomfortable with or find difficult to look at? Maybe you dislike certain features or you're uncomfortable with signs of aging. The natural instinct is often to avoid or reject these parts of ourselves. However, as an experiment, stay focused on your reflection for a few minutes. In this moment, say to yourself, despite my imperfections, I accept myself completely and unreservedly. Keep repeating this statement for a minute or two, allowing yourself to fully experience the meaning of your words. You might feel resistance to this idea, especially if you don't like certain parts of your body. But remember, acceptance does not mean liking or enjoying every aspect of yourself. It simply means acknowledging the truth of who you are, regardless of whether you like it. By staying present with this truth, you may begin to feel more at ease with yourself. Many people find that by committing to this exercise twice a day for 2 weeks, morning and night, they start to see a shift in how they feel about themselves. This practice can help bridge the gap between self-acceptance and self-esteem. After all, how can we expect to have high self-esteem if we reject our own bodies? Additionally, this exercise can motivate us to change the things we don't like about ourselves. Acceptance doesn't mean giving up on self-improvement, it actually empowers us to make changes. When we acknowledge what is, we can move toward what we want to become. Listening to and accepting our emotions. Both self-acceptance and disowning emotions are processes that involve both mental and physical actions. When we accept our feelings, we focus on them, breathe deeply, and allow ourselves to feel them fully. This process involves acknowledging that the feeling belongs to us and is part of our current reality. In contrast, when we disown or deny our emotions, we often tighten our muscles, avoid awareness of our feelings, and disengage from the experience. This repression prevents us from understanding and processing our emotions, making it harder to move forward. For example, a client once struggled with anger over her husband leaving for a 2-week business trip. Initially, she criticized herself for feeling angry and irrational. But when I guided her to explore her feelings more deeply, she discovered that beneath her anger, she was anxious about being left alone. By accepting this deeper emotion, she was able to understand the root of her feelings and begin addressing her concerns more effectively. By accepting our emotions, we allow them to inform us and guide us toward resolution. Suppressing or denying emotions only keeps us stuck. Self-acceptance is a powerful tool that can radically transform our relationship with ourselves. It's the key to building self-esteem, healing old wounds, and creating a life that reflects our true worth. By committing to the practice of self-acceptance, we not only gain a deeper understanding of ourselves but also unlock the ability to make lasting changes in our lives. A personal experience. When I was a teenager, I had very little understanding of how to handle difficult emotions. I often thought that the best way to deal with them was by conquering them, and I equated denial and disowning with strength. I distinctly remember the deep loneliness and longing I felt as a teenager. I longed for someone I could share my thoughts, interests, and feelings with. By the time I turned 16, I had convinced myself that feeling lonely was a sign of weakness and that desiring intimacy with others was a failure in terms of independence. I didn't always hold this belief, but when I did, it left me with no way of managing the pain except to tense my body, hold my breath, and distract myself. I tried to convince myself I didn't care. In essence, I clung to a sense of isolation as though it were a virtue. I didn't give people much of a chance because I believed I was different from everyone else, and I saw that difference as a vast gap separating us. I told myself that my thoughts and my books were enough, that I should be content with that if I truly were self-reliant. Had I accepted my desire for human connection, I might have sought to build bridges of understanding with others. If I had allowed myself to fully experience the pain of isolation without blaming myself, I could have made friends and noticed the kindness and interest others extended toward me. If I had allowed myself the freedom to go through the typical stages of adolescence, I could have avoided the challenges I later faced in my first marriage. I wouldn't have been so vulnerable to the first person who seemed to share my interests. However, my main point here is how rejecting certain aspects of myself impacted my self-esteem. While there may have been valid reasons for my lack of self-acceptance, that's not the focus now. The core issue was that, whether I accepted it or not, I was condemning part of myself, the part that yearned for human companionship. I was in conflict with myself, and no matter how confident I might have been in other areas of my life, I was essentially wounding my self-esteem. The turning point came when I eventually learned to embrace these disowned parts of myself, and that's when I saw a real boost in my self-esteem. As a psychotherapist, I found that nothing enhances an individual's self-esteem as much as becoming aware of and accepting those parts of themselves they've disowned. The first steps toward healing and growth are awareness and acceptance, consciousness and integration. These are the foundation for personal development. An exercise to promote self-acceptance. A useful exercise I often guide my clients through is one that encourages deeper self-acceptance. Start by taking a few moments to reflect on a feeling or emotion that is hard for you to face, such as insecurity, pain, envy, rage, sorrow, humiliation, or fear. Once you've isolated the feeling, try to bring it into sharper focus. Think about the situations or memories that typically trigger it. Then breathe into the feeling. Imagine that the air flows directly to the feeling and then flows back out. Picture what it would be like to not resist this emotion but to fully accept it. Explore that experience without judgment. Take your time. You can say to yourself, I am feeling emotion and I accept it fully. At first, this might be difficult and you may tense your body in protest, but stick with it. Focus on your breath and allow your muscles to release their tension. Remind yourself that a feeling is simply what it is. If it exists, it exists. Keep contemplating that feeling and remind yourself that you are willing to allow it to be there. This practice is all about welcoming self-acceptance. When self-acceptance feels impossible. What if a particular feeling, thought, or memory is so overwhelming that accepting it feels impossible? In this case, the feeling might be so distressing that trying to accept it might seem out of the question. We may feel powerless to stop blocking it. The solution is not to resist our resistance. Instead, we should acknowledge where we are in the moment. If we can't accept a feeling, we should begin by accepting our refusal to accept it. By staying present with this resistance, we give it space to dissolve. When we fight against something, it strengthens. But when we acknowledge, experience, and accept our resistance, it starts to dissolve because resistance cannot survive without opposition. I remember working with a client, a clergyman, who struggled greatly with accepting his anger. He would deny it, yet the anger was there. I suggested he try a simple exercise. I asked him to stand in front of the group and say, I am angry, over and over. As he did this, the anger intensified. Then I had him say, I refuse to accept my anger, and he shouted it with even more intensity. When he began saying, I refuse to accept my refusal to accept my anger, he found himself overwhelmed with emotion. It was in accepting his refusal to accept his feelings that the blockage began to break down. Eventually, he could accept that he was angry, and with that acceptance, we could start exploring the reasons behind it. Common misconceptions about self-acceptance. There are two common fallacies people hold when it comes to self-acceptance. The first is the belief that if we accept ourselves, we must approve of everything about ourselves. The second is that acceptance means we're indifferent to change or improvement. Some might say, I don't want to accept myself as I am, I want to improve. But here's the paradox: if we can't accept what we are now, how will we find the motivation to improve? Denying or disowning our current state leaves us stuck in it. Acceptance of what is forms the foundation for growth and change. Denial keeps us stagnant. Sentence completion for self-acceptance. To facilitate self-acceptance, I've created a 5-week sentence completion exercise. This is more detailed than other exercises because, in my experience, many people struggle with truly embracing self-acceptance. Here's an outline. Week 1, mornings. Self-acceptance to me means, if I am more accepting of my body. When I deny or disown my body. Week 1, evenings. When I deny or disown my conflicts. If I am more accepting of my feelings. When I deny and disown my feelings. Continue the exercises in a similar fashion throughout the following weeks, focusing on different aspects of self-acceptance: actions, fears, pain, anger, sexuality, excitement, joy, etc. The ultimate crime against ourselves, denying the positive. We often think about denying our flaws and shortcomings, but we can also be just as frightened of acknowledging our strengths, talents, and potential. Nietzsche once said, I did it, says memory. I couldn't have, says pride, and remains relentless. Eventually, memory yields. We can reject nearly every part of our experience, whether it's our weakness, brilliance, or even our happiness. The most damaging thing we do to ourselves is not just rejecting our flaws, but also rejecting our greatness because it scares us. True self-acceptance involves acknowledging not just the worst within us, but also the best. When we fully accept ourselves, we free ourselves to grow and reach our full potential. This process of self-acceptance is the second pillar of self-esteem, and it is key to improving how we feel about ourselves and moving forward toward personal growth. The importance of self-responsibility for personal growth and happiness. To truly feel capable of navigating life and deserving of happiness, it's essential to have a sense of control over our own existence. This control comes from being willing to take full responsibility for our actions and the pursuit of our personal goals. Taking ownership of our life and well-being is key to this process. Self-responsibility is a fundamental component of self-esteem, and it is also a natural expression of the esteem we hold for ourselves. The connection between self-esteem and its core practices is reciprocal. The actions that cultivate self-esteem are, in turn, expressions and outcomes of having strong self-esteem. This relationship is crucial, and as we will explore in a later section, these practices influence and reflect our sense of self-worth. So, what does practicing self-responsibility mean in practical terms? Key principles of self-responsibility. 1. I am accountable for my desires. No one is responsible for fulfilling my desires except myself. It is my responsibility to identify what I truly want and figure out how to attain it. If my goals require collaboration, I must recognize what others need from me and meet those requirements to gain their cooperation. 2. I am responsible for my decisions and actions. Responsibility doesn't imply guilt or blame, but rather acknowledging that I am the primary force behind the choices I make and the actions I take. Understanding this connection empowers me to own my decisions and their consequences. 3. I am responsible for my level of awareness at work. Whether I bring a high level of consciousness and focus to my work or approach it passively is entirely up to me. The choice to engage fully in my tasks is mine alone, and that choice influences the quality of my work. 4. I am responsible for my relationships. I am in charge of how I show up in my interactions with others. Whether I'm engaging with coworkers, family members, or friends, it's my responsibility to be present, aware of my communication, and mindful of how my words and actions affect those around me. 5. I am responsible for my behavior towards others. The way I treat others, whether it's a colleague, a loved one, or a stranger, is my responsibility. I must take ownership of the promises I make, how I listen, and how I speak, recognizing that these interactions are a reflection of my character. 6. I am responsible for how I manage my time. The way I choose to allocate my time and energy is a direct reflection of my values. If I claim that family is a top priority but spend my time elsewhere, I must acknowledge the discrepancy and reassess how I invest my time. 7. I am responsible for the clarity and quality of my communication. Clear, honest communication is my responsibility. I need to ensure that others understand me, that I convey my thoughts with respect, and that I listen actively. 8. I am responsible for my own happiness. One of the most common misconceptions is that happiness comes from external sources, whether it's another person, a job, or a specific circumstance. But the truth is, I am responsible for cultivating my own happiness. This realization places the power back in my hands and allows me to act in ways that promote my well-being. 9. I am responsible for the values I live by. If I have simply accepted certain values without actively choosing them, I need to reconsider. Living according to values that were unconsciously adopted limits my personal growth. Taking responsibility for my values means I can reassess, revise, and align them with the life I want to lead. 10. I am responsible for raising my self-esteem. Self-esteem doesn't come from others. It is something I generate from within. If I wait for someone else to give me self-esteem, I will be disappointed. The only way to grow in self-esteem is to consciously take responsibility for my actions, choices, and mindset. The practical impact of self-responsibility. Let's break down what taking responsibility means in action. For my desires, I don't sit around waiting for my wishes to come true. I proactively create an action plan to achieve my goals. If others need to be involved, I understand their needs and responsibilities and work collaboratively with them. My desires are mine to fulfill, and I'm willing to take the necessary steps to make them a reality. For my choices and actions, Being responsible means acknowledging that I am the cause of my behavior. I am the one who makes decisions, and I am the one who must live with the outcomes. This mindset shifts me from being reactive to proactive in every area of life. For my work and relationships, if I take responsibility for my actions at work, I'm more likely to engage fully and put forth my best effort. Likewise, in my relationships, it's up to me to be present, to communicate clearly, and to treat others with respect. For my time, I'm responsible for how I spend my time. If I prioritize tasks that align with my true goals, I'll feel more fulfilled. If I let distractions take over, I'll feel frustrated and out of control. For my happiness, I choose how I respond to life's challenges. Instead of waiting for others to make me happy, I take responsibility for my own joy, well-being, and emotional health. This shift empowers me to take action that leads to a more fulfilling life. The role of responsibility in overcoming challenges. Being responsible for my happiness and well-being doesn't mean that life will be free from hardship or that I am always in control of external circumstances. Accidents happen and other people may impact my life in ways I cannot predict. However, the key is knowing what is within my control and what isn't. The only thing I can control is my own mindset and actions. Accepting responsibility for what is mine and letting go of what is beyond my control ensures I can navigate life with integrity and clarity. Real-life examples of self-responsibility. In work and personal life, practicing self-responsibility is evident in those who take initiative. They don't wait for others to solve problems or blame others for their struggles. Instead, they ask themselves, what can I do to change this situation? They stay solution-focused and proactive. In personal situations such as relationships or personal growth, individuals who embrace self-responsibility are often more willing to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves. For example, someone struggling with alcohol addiction might acknowledge that it's not their partner's fault that they drank, but their own choices that have led to the issue. Taking responsibility for their happiness and well-being could lead to them seeking help, making healthier choices, and ultimately transforming their life. A personal reflection on self-responsibility. Even though I have generally lived a life where I take responsibility for my choices, I have not always been perfect. I recall a period in my 20s when I was in a relationship that had a profound impact on my life. Initially, the relationship was supportive and enriching, but over time it became toxic and damaging to my growth. Instead of taking the necessary steps to address the issues, I waited, hoping the other person would make the changes I knew were needed. This failure to take responsibility for my part in the situation caused unnecessary pain and frustration for both of us. Once I finally took the initiative to confront the situation, I was able to regain control and move forward. Taking responsibility for our life, actions, and happiness is an empowering choice. It requires courage, honesty, and self-awareness. The more we practice self-responsibility, the more we cultivate self-esteem, leading to greater personal growth and fulfillment. Embracing responsibility allows us to live authentically and consciously, shaping our destiny with clarity and integrity. Self-responsibility, the path to personal growth and fulfillment. Living a life of self-responsibility means embracing productive goals and actively working toward them. It's through work and purposeful action that we support our existence and develop our full potential. Without clear, productive goals, we remain in a state of immaturity, always dependent on external circumstances. No matter where we are or what limitations we may face, independence and self-responsibility shine through when we ask the crucial questions: what can I do in this situation? How can I improve my life? What actions can I take to move forward? This mindset reflects an active, engaged approach to life where we recognize that no one is here to rescue us from the responsibilities we must face ourselves. Thinking independently, the key to true freedom. To live a conscious life is to think independently. Self-responsibility is directly linked to independent thinking, where we no longer simply accept the beliefs and opinions of others. Instead, we engage our minds in a process of understanding, evaluation, and judgment. Too often, what people call thinking is simply parroting what others have said. This type of passive thinking keeps us from truly understanding the world around us. Real independent thinking is not just about memorizing others' ideas, but about questioning and evaluating them to form our own conclusions. By doing this, we build our self-esteem, which in turn empowers us to make decisions based on our own values and reasoning. The moral foundation of self-responsibility. Self-responsibility isn't just about personal growth, it's also a moral principle that shapes how we interact with others. To take full responsibility for our lives is to acknowledge that other people are not here to serve our needs. We must respect their autonomy as much as we respect our own. One key moral rule that arises from this principle is never ask someone to act against their self-interest as they understand it. If we want someone to take action or provide something of value, we must present a compelling case that aligns with their goals and values. This philosophy lays the foundation for mutual respect, goodwill, and understanding in human relationships. It rejects any form of exploitation or manipulation, which are often the roots of dictatorships and oppressive systems. Exercises for developing self-responsibility. In my therapy practice, I've used a series of exercises designed to help individuals explore and develop their sense of self-responsibility. These exercises take the form of sentence stems that encourage reflection and self-examination. Here's an overview of how these can be broken down across several weeks. Week 1. Self-responsibility to me means, at the thought of being responsible for my own existence, if I accepted responsibility for my own existence, that would mean, when I avoid responsibility for my existence. Week 2. If I accept 5% more responsibility for my goals. When I avoid responsibility for my goals. If I took more responsibility for my relationships. Sometimes I keep myself passive by. Week 3. If I take responsibility for the messages I received from my mother. If I take responsibility for the messages I received from my father. If I take responsibility for the ideas I accept or reject. If I bring greater awareness to the ideas that motivate me. Each week, these prompts help individuals reflect on various aspects of their lives, from relationships to personal happiness. By continuously engaging with these prompts, they are encouraged to think deeply and actively about their responsibilities, and to work toward becoming more self-reliant and self-aware. The power of personal accountability. There is one pivotal moment in the process of self-improvement that stands out. When we realize that no one is coming to save us. We might long for a rescuer, a person or a situation that will magically solve all our problems. But this dream is a trap. The truth is that if we don't take charge of our lives, nothing will change. This realization can be both daunting and empowering. I recall a time in my therapy group when a member humorously challenged the idea of, "No one is coming." They said, "Nathaniel, it's not true. You came." I smiled and replied, "Yes, but I came to tell you that no one else is coming. The message is clear. We must take ownership of our lives and our futures." Embracing self-responsibility is not a passive act. It requires actively facing the reality that no external force will come to fix our problems. If we want to change, we must do the work ourselves. By writing regularly and reflecting on prompts like these, you'll uncover deeper insights into your behavior and thought patterns. It's a powerful method for anyone wanting to break free from the passive cycle and step into the active, empowered role of self-responsibility. Taking responsibility for your life means acknowledging that you are the one in control of your destiny. It's about moving from a position of helplessness to one of active engagement. This process is essential for true personal growth, leading to greater self-esteem and a more fulfilling, self-directed life. The practice of self-responsibility is the third and final pillar of self-esteem, and embracing it can lead to profound transformation. Chapter 9. The practice of self-assertiveness, a deep dive into personal empowerment. In one of my graduate psychology classes, I decided to give my students a hands-on demonstration to highlight a critical psychological concept, the fear of self-assertion. I started by asking a very simple yet profound question to the class. How many of you believe you have a right to exist? Every student raised their hand. Then I invited a volunteer to help me with an exercise. A young man came to the front and I asked him to stand tall and repeatedly say, "I have a right to exist." I instructed him to say it slowly, paying attention to how it made him feel. As he began, his tone was defensive and almost combative. "I have a right to exist." Each time he said it, his voice grew louder and more forceful, almost as if preparing for an argument. I stopped him and pointed out that no one was challenging him. There was no need for defiance. "Can you say it without the edge?" I asked. But despite his efforts, he couldn't. The anticipation of an attack lingered in his voice, and no one in the class truly believed him. Then a young woman came forward. Her voice was soft and hesitant, almost as if apologizing for taking up space. "I have a right to exist," she said with a forced smile, but again, no one believed her either. Another student stepped up, but his delivery was too theatrical, almost exaggerated in its attempt to assert himself. It wasn't authentic. The class was starting to understand the point. It's easy to say something like 2 and 2 make 4 because it's a simple, uncontroversial statement. But asserting something as personal and profound as "I have a right to exist" seems much more difficult. The class was starting to grasp the deeper psychological issue at play. I then asked them, "What does the phrase, 'I have a right to exist,' mean to you?" The responses varied, but they were all telling. One student said, "It means my life belongs to me." Another remarked, "It means I can make my own choices, independent of others' expectations." Others echoed similar thoughts, each highlighting personal freedom, autonomy, and self-respect. However, these were all things the students had a hard time expressing confidently, which is exactly the point I was trying to make. Asserting one's right to exist can be deeply challenging on a psychological level. What is self-assertiveness? Self-assertiveness, at its core, is the ability to honor and express our own needs, desires, and values in a way that is appropriate to the circumstances we find ourselves in. It's about finding the courage to express ourselves truthfully and confidently in a world where the pressures of social expectations often make us want to shrink away or hide. The opposite of self-assertiveness is surrendering to fear and timidity, which leads to the suppression of our true selves. This often happens when we are afraid of confrontation or of not fitting in. Instead of honoring our authentic selves, we put on a mask to please others or avoid conflict. It's important to note that self-assertiveness does not mean being aggressive or rude. It doesn't mean pushing others aside or disregarding their needs. True self-assertiveness is about standing up for yourself and treating yourself with respect without resorting to manipulation or deceit. It's about being who you truly are and not pretending to be someone else just to be liked. Being self-assertive means being real. It's about living authentically, speaking from your heart, and expressing your feelings and beliefs in an open and honest way. However, self-assertiveness is not about being rigid or inflexible. It's about understanding when and how to express yourself in a way that fits the context. The way you assert yourself while playing with a child will naturally be different from how you assert yourself in a professional setting. But in both cases, your expression should come from an authentic place. How self-assertiveness works in different contexts. Self-assertiveness is all about context. There are times when expressing yourself openly is appropriate and times when silence or a subtle nonverbal cue is more fitting. For example, in a workplace setting, it may not always be appropriate to voice every single thought you have. However, it is crucial that you know what you think and remain true to your authentic self, even if you don't speak every thought aloud. The critical choice in any situation is whether to express your authentic self or to hide behind inauthenticity. The key is realizing that you always have a choice. Denying this choice and claiming helplessness is often a defense mechanism to avoid the discomfort of standing up for yourself. Key principles of self-assertiveness. 1. Assertion of consciousness. The most fundamental act of self-assertion is the choice to be aware, to think, and to see the world and your own life clearly. When you challenge authority, ask questions, or simply choose to think for yourself, you are asserting your own consciousness. It is this awareness that forms the foundation of self-assertiveness. However, it's important to distinguish this from mindless rebellion. Just being against something without thought or purpose is not self-assertion. It's simply being reactive. 2. The right to exist. Practicing self-assertiveness means embracing the fact that your life is your own. It is not for others to dictate your worth or purpose. For many, this realization can be daunting. It requires taking responsibility for your own existence and for finding your own security without relying on others to provide it. The fear of this responsibility is one of the greatest barriers to developing self-esteem. If you do not stand up for your right to exist and live on your own terms, how can you truly experience personal dignity? 3. Following your values. Self-assertiveness isn't just about saying no when needed. It's about saying yes to what truly matters to you. It's about expressing your values and actively living in alignment with them. People often fall into the trap of thinking that honoring their values means merely acknowledging them, but self-assertiveness requires bringing those values into action. To think of yourself as a valuer or an idealist without pursuing those values in your everyday life is to live in self-delusion. 4. Taking action. Self-assertiveness means not just having good ideas but fighting for them, working to turn them into reality. It's about participating fully, putting yourself into your work or projects with passion and commitment. Without this kind of involvement, potential contributions go unmade. 5. Confronting life's challenges. To be self-assertive is also to confront challenges head-on. It means pushing yourself to expand your skills, knowledge, and competence. The act of taking on new learning or tasks that challenge you is an important form of self-assertion. This isn't just about gaining knowledge, but about asserting your place in the world through continuous growth and mastery. Overcoming the fear of self-assertiveness. One of the biggest fears people face when practicing self-assertiveness is the fear of standing out or being rejected. In societies where conformity is valued, standing up for your individuality can seem like a threat to social harmony. This is particularly true for women, who often face social penalties when they express assertiveness that is considered unfeminine or too aggressive. Examples of self-betrayal. Imagine a young man sitting alone in a dark theater, deeply moved by a film. The emotional impact is so profound that tears come to his eyes, and he knows that he will want to return to the theater in a few days to see it again. After the film, he encounters a friend in the lobby who was also in the audience. The friend casually asks, "What did you think of the movie?" Instantly, the young man is filled with fear. He doesn't want to appear overly emotional or uncool. Instead of expressing his true feelings, "I loved it. It really moved me," he says, "not bad," in a way that hides his real reaction. He doesn't realize it in the moment, but by suppressing his feelings, he's diminishing his own self-esteem. A woman at a cocktail party overhears a racist comment, and though she feels repulsed, she says nothing. Despite knowing that by staying silent, she is allowing such behavior to persist, she chooses to ignore it out of fear of social disapproval. Later, to ease her conscience, she justifies her silence by telling herself it wasn't worth confronting him, he's just ignorant. But deep inside, her self-esteem knows that silence in the face of wrong is a betrayal of her values. A college student attends a lecture by an author whose work has had a significant impact on him. After the lecture, he wants to tell the writer how much her work means to him, but he feels intimidated. "What's the point?" he thinks. "She's famous, my opinion doesn't matter." Despite the opportunity, he remains silent, afraid of coming off as pushy or insignificant. In another example, a woman listens to her husband express an opinion she strongly disagrees with. She wants to challenge his view but is afraid of upsetting their relationship. She has been taught that a good wife supports her husband without question, and her fear of confrontation keeps her from speaking her truth. This internalized belief leads her to suppress her thoughts, and over time, this silence creates a sense of guilt, a subtle but persistent erosion of her self-respect. A personal reflection. There was a time when I experienced the kind of visibility that comes from being deeply understood and valued by someone I admired greatly. Early in my relationship with the philosopher Ayn Rand, I felt that I was truly seen and appreciated. But as time went on, I began to notice that Rand, while intellectually generous, could not tolerate disagreement or criticism from those close to her. The admiration I had for her grew to a point where I found myself censoring my own thoughts to maintain her approval. Over the years, I became aware of how my need for her esteem led me to silence my honest opinions, and this became a form of self-betrayal. I had allowed myself to become addicted to the validation she provided at the cost of my own self-assertiveness. This realization came gradually, and in hindsight, I understand the damage that such self-suppression caused to my self-esteem. The lesson I eventually learned was invaluable. Sacrifices of self in the name of admiration are not sustainable. They only delay inevitable confrontations and personal reckonings. No amount of admiration or validation from another person can justify betraying one's own sense of judgment or self-worth. Practical steps toward building self-assertiveness. Self-assertiveness is essential not only to our mental health but also as a practical means of reinforcing our sense of self-esteem. It involves standing up for ourselves in the face of challenges, expressing our desires and thoughts openly, and being true to our values. The goal of self-assertiveness is not just to protect one's dignity, but to foster a deeper respect for oneself in daily interactions. Here are some sentence starters that can help you engage in self-reflection about self-assertiveness. Week 1. To me, being self-assertive means, if I embraced self-assertiveness by just 5% more today, if someone had told me my needs and desires were important, if I could treat my own wants as important. Week 2. If I paid more attention to my deepest desires and needs, when I ignore my innermost needs, if I were able to say yes when I want to say yes and no when I want to say no, if I voiced my thoughts more freely. Week 3. When I suppress my true thoughts or opinions, if I allowed myself to ask for what I truly want, when I remained silent about what I need or want, if I allowed myself to express the music inside me. Week 4. If I permitted myself to hear the music inside me, if I could express just 5% more of myself today, when I hide who I truly am, if I want to live a fuller, more authentic life. End your week's reflections by completing this prompt. If what I have written is true, it might be helpful if I. These exercises, along with open discussion in groups or with a trusted friend, can help move self-assertiveness from theory into practice. Repeated practice, even when it feels uncomfortable, builds both courage and confidence. Building courage through self-assertion. We must remember that the actions that reinforce a healthy self-esteem, such as self-assertiveness, are themselves a manifestation of that esteem. Often, we think that confident people are naturally self-assertive because they have high self-esteem. However, the truth is that building self-esteem often requires us to act self-assertively, especially when it feels difficult. It's the courage to speak up or stand firm when doing so isn't easy that ultimately strengthens our sense of self-worth. Self-assertiveness is not about being self-absorbed or arrogant. It's about recognizing our own value and expressing it in the world, even when it feels risky. The practice of asserting our needs, thoughts, and desires is both a reflection of healthy self-esteem and a vital way to nurture and grow that esteem. Chapter 10. The Practice of Living Purposefully, a Guide to Intentional Living. I have a friend in his late 60s who is renowned for being one of the most influential business speakers in the country. A few years ago, he reconnected with a woman he had loved deeply in his younger years but had lost touch with for decades. Now both in their 60s, they rekindled their romance, and their love blossomed with renewed passion. One evening, while sharing the details of his rediscovered love over dinner, I could see how genuinely happy he was. His face lit up with joy, and it was clear that he was overwhelmed with excitement. After reflecting on his 2 previous divorces, he said with a sense of urgency, "I really hope I handle this right this time. I want this relationship to work so badly. I just hope I don't mess it up." He paused and asked, "Do you have any advice?" Without hesitation, I replied, "Yes, I do. If you want this to work, you need to make it your conscious purpose to make it work." He leaned forward, intrigued by what I had to say next. "Think about it," I continued. "If you were working at IBM and an executive said, 'I hope we get this marketing campaign right. I really wish we succeed,' you'd be quick to respond. You'd ask, 'What do you mean by hope and wish?' We need clear goals and action plans. My advice is to approach this relationship the same way you approach business. Apply the same purpose and action-oriented mindset. Leave hoping and wishing to children." The look on his face was priceless, as he immediately understood the value of purpose and how it can be applied to all areas of life. This brings us to a crucial aspect of living a fulfilling life: living purposefully. The importance of purpose in life. Living without a clear sense of purpose means being at the mercy of chance, the random phone call, the unexpected encounter, or the fleeting event. Without a clear direction, we become like a cork floating aimlessly on water, drifting from one situation to another without initiative or control over our own journey. In contrast, living purposefully means actively using our energy, time, and resources to achieve specific goals that we set for ourselves. These goals might include raising a family, starting a business, advancing in your career, or nurturing a loving relationship. It is these purposeful goals that give direction to our lives and fuel our actions. Purpose and productivity. To live purposefully is also to live productively. Productivity is essential for shaping and supporting our existence. It means translating our thoughts and ideas into action and creating tangible results. Whether through work, creative projects, or personal achievements, productivity helps us make meaningful progress in life. Self-reliant individuals do not depend on others to support them. The key is not the amount of work one does, but the choice to apply one's abilities effectively. Whether your work is in the arts, sciences, business, or social service, what matters is the willingness to contribute and exercise your potential. Productive individuals set goals that align with their abilities, and through those goals, they express their self-concept and vision for what is possible in their lives. Efficacy and purpose. Efficacy, or the feeling of being competent and effective, is foundational to self-esteem. This sense of competence is built by mastering specific tasks and challenges. It's not about achieving success for the sake of external validation, but about the process of striving toward and achieving goals that make us feel capable and competent in the world. A key insight is that personal and professional achievements help us build efficacy. Success doesn't just happen in abstract or generalized terms, it's experienced in the context of specific tasks and goals. This is why productive work is a powerful tool for enhancing self-esteem, because it involves a tangible application of skills and abilities. The challenge for many people lies in applying these concepts not just to work but also to personal relationships. It's easy to focus on the measurable results in professional life, but when it comes to relationships, many people assume that love or good intentions are enough. However, in relationships, as in work, clear goals and conscious actions are needed to make them thrive. The importance of specific goals. To live purposefully, our goals must be concrete and measurable. A goal like doing my best is too vague to guide effective action. Instead, clear and specific goals like exercising for 30 minutes 4 times a week or completing this project by the end of the month are much more effective because they allow us to track progress and adjust our actions as needed. With specificity, we can monitor our progress, make course corrections when necessary, and stay accountable for the results we produce. Purposeful living requires ongoing evaluation of where we are and where we want to go. We must ask ourselves, what am I trying to achieve? What steps do I need to take to reach this goal? Is my approach working? Living consciously and purposefully. Living purposefully also means living consciously. It means being aware of your goals, actions, and results at every step. This high level of awareness allows us to make informed decisions, adjust strategies, and optimize our actions to ensure they align with our long-term objectives. However, living purposefully isn't just about work or personal achievements. It also applies to relationships. It's easy to assume that love will naturally sustain a relationship, but purposeful living asks, what actions must I take to foster trust, intimacy, growth, and communication in this relationship? If a couple is in conflict, they must ask themselves, what actions are we prepared to take to resolve this conflict and restore harmony? Living without a plan, without specific actions, will not lead to lasting success. Daydreams and vague hopes never turn into reality. Intentions must be backed by action or they remain unrealized. The role of self-discipline. To live purposefully and productively, one must develop self-discipline. This is the ability to organize and direct our behavior over time to serve specific tasks and goals. Self-discipline is crucial because it enables us to delay immediate gratification in favor of long-term success. A purposeful life requires thinking ahead, making decisions based on long-term outcomes, and maintaining focus even when temptations arise to divert our attention. Whether in business, parenting, or personal development, self-discipline is what keeps us on track and moving forward. However, a life of purpose and self-discipline doesn't mean eliminating relaxation, fun, or spontaneity. It means choosing these activities consciously, knowing when to step back and recharge. In fact, taking time off to regenerate serves a purpose in itself as it renews our energy for the tasks ahead. What living purposefully involves? Living purposefully involves several key practices. 1. Setting clear goals. Take responsibility for defining what you want and where you want to go in life. Whether personal, professional, or relational, your goals should be specific and measurable. 2. Identifying necessary actions. Break your goals down into actionable steps. What needs to be done to achieve each goal? What resources or skills will you need to acquire along the way? 3. Monitoring progress. Regularly check whether your actions are aligned with your goals. If you find that you've strayed off course, adjust your approach to get back on track. 4. Evaluating outcomes. Pay attention to the results of your actions. Are you achieving what you set out to do? If not, analyze what went wrong and revise your plan as necessary. By following these practices, you ensure that your life is not left to chance but is actively shaped by your intentions and actions. Purposeful living is about creating a life where each day is driven by clear intentions and conscious decisions, leading to fulfillment and self-actualization. In conclusion, living purposefully isn't just about having goals, it's about taking consistent, deliberate actions to achieve them. It's about being conscious, disciplined, and accountable in all aspects of life, from your work to your relationships to your personal growth. Purposeful living leads to a life that is not just lived but crafted with intention, where every decision, action, and outcome reflects your true desires and values. Thinking clearly about living with purpose rephrased. 1. Let's begin with a common misunderstanding about purposeful living. In existential psychotherapy, psychiatrist Irvin D. Yalom makes a striking claim that the belief life is incomplete without pursuing goals is more a cultural myth of the West than an existential truth. But when we look at life, from the simplest organisms to complex human beings, it becomes evident that striving toward goals is a natural part of being alive. Life doesn't just happen without purpose, it thrives on it. Purposeful action is not some cultural illusion, it's a fundamental aspect of life and often a source of great fulfillment. This isn't to say our value depends on achievements. Rather, the core of our self-respect lies in the internal habits and disciplines that enable us to set and work toward goals in the first place. Without purpose, we are left with aimlessness. And can we really be surprised that such a state doesn't bring the same joy that progress and growth can bring? And let's be clear, purposeful living doesn't only refer to material or career-related goals. A life spent in reflection, service, or spiritual growth can also be purposeful if it's intentional. But a life lacking any direction at all? That's a life disconnected from what makes us truly human. 2. Saying that living with intention supports healthy self-esteem doesn't mean our worth depends on our outer successes. Yes, we often respect and admire achievements, our own and others. That's normal and even healthy. But our worth is not the sum of our accomplishments. Instead, it comes from the attitudes and behaviors that allow achievement in the first place, things like self-awareness, responsibility, and integrity. To make this clearer, consider the words of industrialist Andrew Carnegie. He once said that even if all his factories, money, and infrastructure were taken away, his team would rebuild within a few years. His message? True power lies in the source of success, not in the success itself. This idea applies directly to self-esteem. The foundation isn't the end result, but the internal strength and mindset that create it. 3. While productive work can be a healthy expression of self-worth, it should never be the sole foundation of it. A person may succeed greatly in their career and still struggle emotionally and interpersonally. They might throw themselves into work not out of passion, but to avoid unresolved emotional wounds, turning work into an escape rather than a calling. Some even tie their entire identity and self-worth to their job or financial status. This is risky. If external circumstances change, say a business fails or a job is lost, it can cause not only financial stress but also a collapse of self-worth. In one example, when an aerospace company closed a plant, crisis hotlines were overwhelmed. Many of these workers, particularly men, had linked their sense of identity and masculinity to being providers. At a lecture I gave in Detroit to professionals in the auto industry, I said, if your self-worth depends on how well your company is doing, then you're letting strangers in Washington hold your sense of self in their hands. That idea offended many, and it should. It's one thing to feel stressed about finances, it's another to believe that a job loss means you're not good enough as a person. That belief is what shatters self-esteem. 4. I've worked with people of all ages facing job loss or age discrimination. Some were older workers replaced by less qualified younger hires. Others were talented young professionals passed over for older candidates. Either way, they felt their personal value slipping away. But true self-esteem doesn't depend on forces outside our control. It comes from within by evaluating ourselves based on what we can directly influence. So, the question to ask in times of self-doubt is this situation within my conscious control? If not, then while it may still be painful or unfair, it shouldn't define our self-worth. Someday, I hope this understanding becomes part of how we raise children and educate in schools. 5. Once I asked a friend nearing retirement what goals he had for the rest of his life. He replied that he had none. He'd spent his whole life chasing the future and now wanted to finally enjoy the present. And yet, even in that, there was a kind of purpose. The issue wasn't whether he had goals, but whether he had ever found a healthy balance between future vision and present presence. Many people become so focused on proving themselves or avoiding failure that they lose the joy in the process. But if our goals are about self-expression, not validation, finding this balance becomes easier. Examples. Jack dreamed of being a writer. He imagined the acclaim, the book covers, the interviews, but he never actually wrote. He floated between low-paying jobs, telling himself these were temporary as he waited for inspiration. But time passed and fear grew. He told himself others lived small, uninspired lives, but his grand dreams remained unexpressed. His problem wasn't lack of vision, it was lack of action. Mary, an advertising executive, loved helping people. So much so, she spent hours chatting with colleagues about their problems, work-related or not. But her actual job performance slipped. She didn't realize she had unconsciously prioritized being needed over doing her job. Her intentions were kind, but her lack of discipline led to her being fired. Her case shows how unconscious goals can override conscious ones when we don't stay aligned. Mark, a father, wanted his son to be confident and responsible. But he lectured constantly, intimidated the boy, and dismissed his feelings. In business, when something didn't work, he adapted. At home, he doubled down. He didn't notice that what worked professionally, paying attention to outcomes, he failed to apply in parenting. The lesson? Doing more of what doesn't work. Personal reflections on purposeful living. Living with purpose, to me, starts with taking initiative. It's closely tied to self-responsibility. Once I wanted to improve my lifestyle, but for years I did nothing. Then I had a simple but powerful realization: if I don't act, nothing will change. That moment lit a fire under me. I created a meaningful project, something I'd put off for too long. It was fulfilling and profitable. Not only did I feel happier, but my self-esteem grew. Procrastination had been holding me hostage. Clarity and commitment set me free. Another example, my wife, Devers, is incredibly consistent in her kindness. While I've always meant well, I've often been so focused on tasks that I forgot to show care. One day, she told me, "You're kind when it occurs to you. What you've never developed is the discipline of kindness." That stayed with me. Over time, I integrated kindness as a conscious practice, not just a mood-driven gesture. And again, I noticed my self-esteem rise as a result. Because being kind by intention feels vastly different than being kind by impulse. Daily practices for purposeful living. Here are a few prompts that can help deepen awareness and strengthen purpose. Living purposefully to me means: if I brought just 5% more intention to my life today. If I approached my work with 5% more purpose. If I communicated with 5% more clarity and intention. If I were 5% more purposeful in my relationships. If I honored my deepest desires with even 5% more focus. If I took full responsibility for meeting my needs. Purposeful living isn't about obsessing over outcomes, it's about acting with conscious intent. It's about aligning our behavior with our values. When we do this consistently, we gain a sense of agency and control over our lives. And in that, we find one of the deepest foundations of self-esteem. Chapter 11. The importance of personal integrity and its impact on self-esteem. As we grow and form our own values, whether from personal experiences or the influence of others, the concept of integrity becomes an increasingly significant part of how we evaluate ourselves. Integrity is the alignment of our beliefs, values, and actions. It occurs when our actions reflect the ideals we claim to uphold. In simple terms, it means that our behavior matches our stated principles. Integrity is a concern only for those who have clear values and standards. For people who have not yet developed a personal code of conduct, the concept of integrity doesn't apply. These individuals haven't yet reached a level of moral development where they are held accountable for acting hypocritically. Once we profess to have values, integrity becomes a crucial factor in our personal development. When our actions contradict our values, we lose trust in ourselves. We begin to feel less respect for who we are. Over time, if such behavior becomes habitual, we might even stop trusting ourselves entirely. However, while a breach in integrity doesn't erase the possibility of self-acceptance, it does diminish self-esteem. Integrity becomes the means through which we rebuild and restore self-respect when it's lost. At its core, personal integrity involves simple questions. Am I being honest? Am I reliable? Do I keep my promises? Do I practice what I preach? Am I fair in my treatment of others? When we act in ways that align with our values, we maintain our self-esteem. But sometimes we face situations where our values conflict and making the right choice isn't obvious. In such cases, integrity doesn't guarantee the best choice, but it requires that we make a genuine effort to make the best decision, staying aware of the situation and taking responsibility for our actions and their consequences. It also means we don't try to escape into confusion or denial. Congruence and trust. Integrity is about congruence when words align with actions. Trust is rooted in congruence, and when people's behavior contradicts their words, it creates suspicion and erodes trust. In organizations, for instance, employees often lose trust in their leaders because the leadership's actions don't align with their promises. A company may have a mission statement about respect, yet the actions taken by its leaders may contradict that message. The integrity of a leader is demonstrated through their behavior, not just their words. People who consistently keep their word, honor their commitments, and practice what they preach earn the trust of those around them. Leaders who practice fairness, honesty, and integrity inspire trust in their employees, just as parents who live congruently with their values gain the trust of their children. This trust stems from congruence, the alignment of what is said and what is done. The consequences of betraying our values. When we act against our own moral beliefs, we experience a loss of self-respect. If we lie to our friends while preaching honesty to our children, or if we act unfairly toward others while claiming to support fairness, we betray our own values. This contradiction undermines our sense of self and damages our integrity in a way no external judgment can. The most damaging form of hypocrisy is when we deceive ourselves. We may tell ourselves that only I will know when we act against our values. However, the truth is our inner judgment is the most important. The only judgment that truly affects our self-esteem is our own. The hypocrisy we ignore or rationalize internally will continue to haunt our self-respect and self-esteem. In many cases, the breaches of integrity we face are small, everyday actions. But, over time, the cumulative effect of these actions can significantly affect our self-esteem and sense of self-worth. One example could be a renowned researcher who falsifies data for years, building a career based on lies. Though others may not find out immediately, the researcher knows the truth, and this dissonance eats away at their self-esteem long before the truth is exposed to the world. Self-deception and integrity. Often, the small everyday actions we take that betray our integrity are the ones that have the most profound impact on our self-esteem. In my self-esteem workshops, I've asked participants to complete a sentence. If I brought just 5% more integrity into my life, I would. Responses ranged from I would stop exaggerating to I would admit when I'm wrong. What's clear from these responses is that the matters of integrity that weigh heavily on people's minds are not huge, dramatic events, but small everyday decisions. People tend to underestimate the effect of their small acts of hypocrisy on their self-esteem. They imagine that these lapses only cause minor discomfort. But the truth is, these breaches subtly damage our inner sense of worth and they erode the spirit of who we are. Understanding guilt and integrity. Guilt is an emotional response that emerges when we recognize that we violated our own moral code. It occurs when we feel responsible for a wrong that could have been avoided. In dealing with guilt, it's crucial to recognize what's within our power to change. We must not allow ourselves to feel guilty for things we could not have controlled, such as the actions of others or events beyond our influence. Guilt becomes a problem when it is self-imposed, often irrational, or based on circumstances beyond our control. For example, if we lose someone close to us in an accident, we may irrationally blame ourselves even though there was nothing we could have done to prevent it. In cases like these, guilt offers a false sense of control where there is none. It becomes an unhealthy way of coping with feelings of helplessness. Restoring integrity and making amends. When we recognize that we've acted against our own integrity, there are steps we can take to restore our sense of self-respect and moral alignment. The first step is to take full responsibility for our actions without avoiding or denying them. Next, we must understand why we made the choice we did with compassion but without rationalizing it. If others are involved, we need to acknowledge the harm caused, explicitly express our understanding of how our actions affected them, and make amends whenever possible. Lastly, we must commit to acting differently in the future. Without all these steps, guilt may linger and our sense of integrity will remain compromised. The impact of irrational values on integrity. Sometimes our values may be irrational or unhealthy. We may have adopted beliefs that conflict with our natural needs or desires. For example, certain religious or cultural teachings might impose values that restrict personal pleasure or ambitions, causing inner conflict. In these cases, integrity may require us to confront and question the values we've been taught. Practicing integrity could mean rejecting those irrational beliefs and finding a path that aligns more closely with our true selves. In conclusion, integrity isn't just about doing what's right in the big moments, it's about being true to yourself in the small, everyday decisions. The more we align our actions with our values, the more we can build and maintain a strong sense of self-respect and self-esteem. Whether in personal relationships or professional life, integrity is the foundation of trust, respect, and the ongoing development of our character. The importance of living with integrity and consciously questioning our standards. When we observe that striving to live according to our deeply held standards might be pushing us towards self-destruction, it's crucial to pause and reevaluate. Rather than simply resigning ourselves to live in ways that feel misaligned with our true values, we must summon the courage to challenge those standards. This process of questioning is not just about confronting external norms, but about diving deeply into our own assumptions and beliefs about what we regard as good. The need for this introspection is clear, especially when we consider how many people in therapy express common feelings related to this conflict. Here are some real-life examples of sentence completions often heard in therapy, reflecting the discomfort many feel when questioning their parents' values. At the thought of going against my parents' values, I feel, oh, frightened. Oh, lost. Oh, like an outcast. Oh, like I no longer belong with my family. Oh, alone. Oh, that I would have to think for myself. If I were to think for myself about the values I want to live by, I feel, oh, afraid of what my parents might think. Oh, that it would be hard to stand on my own feet. Oh, like I would lose the love of my parents. Oh, that I might seem arrogant or self-centered. These responses show how deeply embedded our societal and familial values are and how much courage it takes to challenge them. Such conflicts are not just hypothetical but happen in many aspects of life. Consider women grappling with the Catholic Church's stance on birth control and abortion. Government employees witnessing widespread corruption and struggling with patriotism versus personal conscience. Business people who, after achieving success, encounter the uncomfortable tension between their wealth and moral teachings, like those found in religious texts. Wives questioning the traditional role of women as submissive figures in their marriages. Young adults wrestling with military conscription, torn between duty and moral opposition. Former religious leaders attempting to redefine their values after leaving behind an institution that no longer resonates with them. These examples highlight how challenging it can be to align with our own sense of integrity when so much of our lives are shaped by external expectations. Integrity and conscious living, the foundation for moral reflection. For any of these individuals, finding resolution requires more than just surface-level reflection. It requires a deep reconsideration of their most cherished values, priorities, and commitments, values that may have been unexamined up until now. Living consciously and self-responsibly, being fully aware of our choices, is crucial to practicing integrity. It is not enough to go through life mindlessly accepting the values imposed on us by family, culture, or tradition without ever critically reflecting on them. One of the most empowering lessons from the women's movement is its insistence on self-reflection, on questioning the roles and values that society has assigned, and determining for ourselves who we are and what we truly want. Men, too, must embrace independent thinking and reflection, just as women have learned to do. Without this kind of self-reflection, we risk living lives that are uninspiring, unfulfilling, and driven by values that are not truly our own. The role of integrity in ethical decision-making. Joseph Campbell's famous advice to follow your bliss has inspired many, but it can be misleading if not contextualized within a larger ethical framework. Following one's bliss, when disconnected from thoughtful reflection, can lead to actions that disregard the rights and needs of others. A more comprehensive piece of advice might be, live consciously, take responsibility for your choices and actions, respect the rights of others, and follow your bliss. True moral living involves a careful balancing of personal desires with a respect for the wider world. Consider these practical examples of how moral decisions are complicated by our desires and our need for approval. Philip, a confidant of a famous actor, finds himself torn between loyalty and the desire to share intimate details of their relationship with others for status. Even though he insists he's being loyal, he betrays his friend by seeking validation from others, ultimately eroding his own self-esteem. Sally, a member of a book club, faces a moral dilemma when the club chairwoman ostracizes one of her longtime friends. Sally chooses to side with the chairwoman, fearing the loss of status and approval. In the process, she diminishes her self-respect by ignoring her true feelings and compromising her integrity. Irving, a businessman, advocates for free trade until his own company is threatened by foreign competition. Rather than accepting the competitive nature of the market, he lobbies for government protectionism. Despite his earlier beliefs, he convinces himself that his new position is justified. But deep down, he knows he is compromising his own integrity. These examples show how moral dilemmas often arise from the tension between personal desires such as validation, success, or security, and a commitment to living with integrity. The path to self-respect and integrity. Living with integrity is often difficult, especially when society at large seems to encourage corruption or compromise. Yet it is through maintaining personal standards in a world that may seem morally bankrupt that we build true self-respect. Integrity, in this sense, becomes not just a reflection of our ethics but also a demonstration of self-esteem. In today's world, where many public figures seem to embrace corruption and deceit, it can be easy to feel like integrity is a futile pursuit. However, maintaining personal accountability and living according to one's values is a form of self-esteem that stands in contrast to the widespread cynicism. When we practice integrity, we feel better about ourselves whether or not the world around us shares the same commitment. Building integrity over time, a reciprocal relationship with self-esteem. One might ask, do we need to already possess self-esteem in order to practice integrity? Or does integrity itself build self-esteem? The answer lies in what I call the principle of reciprocal causation. In simple terms, the more we act with integrity, the higher our self-esteem becomes. And conversely, the more self-respect we have, the easier it is to act with integrity. It's a cycle. Integrity builds self-esteem, and self-esteem reinforces integrity. The more we practice these virtues, whether it's consciousness, self-responsibility, or integrity, the more we will feel the need to continue practicing them. It becomes second nature, much like physical exercise. At first, it's difficult, but as we continue, it gets easier, and we begin to enjoy the results. Final thoughts: living consciously and practicing integrity. Remember, no one is perfect. The goal isn't to practice these virtues perfectly 100% of the time, but to strive for progress. Small improvements in how we live with integrity can lead to big changes in how we feel about ourselves. The principles outlined here aren't just abstract ideals, they're concrete practices that can guide us toward living with greater self-respect and moral clarity. Whether it's reflecting on our values, making more ethical choices, or simply living more consciously, integrity is the foundation of a fulfilled and meaningful life. Chapter 12. The Philosophy of Self-Esteem, a deep dive into beliefs and practices. In the journey to build self-esteem, it's not just our actions that matter. While daily practices certainly contribute to the health of our self-worth, the beliefs we hold about ourselves and the world around us also play a critical role. The central idea explored in this section of the book is that our self-esteem is deeply influenced by two main factors: our daily practices and the underlying beliefs that guide our actions. These beliefs shape our emotions, thoughts, and behaviors, and ultimately how we perceive our value as individuals. In the earlier chapters, we explored the importance of action in sustaining our self-esteem, action being the fundamental force through which any value is realized and maintained. However, actions are not just random, they are propelled by the beliefs we carry with us. This section of the book focuses on how our convictions affect our practices and, consequently, our self-esteem. Beliefs about the self that strengthen self-esteem. Our beliefs about ourselves, our core convictions, play a crucial role in fostering a sense of self-worth. These are not shallow thoughts we merely tell ourselves to motivate action. They are deeply ingrained ideas that shape who we are and how we behave. Here are some core beliefs that support a strong sense of self-esteem. The right to exist and be valued, a fundamental belief that I have the right to live my life on my terms, free from the expectations or control of others. This extends to recognizing that every individual has this right. Self-respect and self-love. It's vital to recognize that I deserve to be treated with respect and that I am worthy of love and admiration. Even when others do not reciprocate these feelings, it does not diminish my personal worth. The power of choice. I have the right to make choices about my life, and those choices are a reflection of my personal values. My thoughts and actions should not be dictated by others' expectations or opinions. Self-reliance. I trust my ability to understand, analyze, and solve problems. My judgment is valid, and I am capable of achieving my goals as long as they are based on realistic expectations. Perseverance and growth. Mistakes and setbacks are a natural part of life and learning. They do not define me or my value as a person. I am capable of rising from defeat and continuing to grow. Living consciously and self-acceptance. The more aware I am of my needs, desires, values, and goals, the better equipped I am to navigate life effectively. Conscious living, actively choosing to engage with the world and make decisions based on reason and self-awareness, supports a high level of self-esteem. Self-acceptance is another key pillar. This means acknowledging all parts of myself, the good and the bad, without judgment. It's about accepting my flaws and mistakes as part of my human experience without letting them define me. I accept my emotions, thoughts, and actions as integral to who I am in the present moment, even if I don't always like or agree with them. The role of self-responsibility. Another cornerstone of healthy self-esteem is self-responsibility. I am the architect of my life, and I alone am responsible for the choices I make, the actions I take, and the consequences that follow. This includes taking responsibility for my happiness and well-being, managing my time and priorities effectively, communicating honestly and clearly with others, accepting that my life is mine to shape and no one else can live it for me. Self-responsibility also means acknowledging that no one can fix my life for me. While others can offer help or guidance, I am the only one who can take the necessary steps to build a life that aligns with my values and goals. Standing up for yourself. Self-assertiveness. Self-assertiveness is about confidently expressing my thoughts, feelings, and beliefs. It's recognizing that my values are important, and it's perfectly acceptable to stand firm in them, especially when doing so leads to personal growth and the fulfillment of my goals. Living with purpose. To achieve success and fulfillment, I must define my goals and work intentionally toward them. Living purposefully means setting clear objectives, creating plans to achieve them, and continuously adjusting my strategies based on feedback and results. It's about applying self-discipline and staying focused on my long-term goals without being swayed by temporary obstacles. Integrity, aligning actions with values. Personal integrity involves aligning my actions with my beliefs and values. This means practicing honesty, keeping promises, and being consistent in my decisions. Integrity also includes treating others fairly and compassionately, maintaining moral consistency, and ensuring that my self-esteem is not compromised for short-term gains. Beliefs about reality that support self-esteem. Just as important as beliefs about the self are beliefs about the world around us. These are the premises that guide our understanding of reality and shape our interactions with others. Some key beliefs about reality that reinforce self-esteem include the importance of facing reality, accepting facts as they are, rather than evading uncomfortable truths. This leads to better decision-making and more fulfilling outcomes. The value of knowledge. Reality is knowable, and we have the capacity to understand it. Seeking knowledge and understanding is an essential part of personal growth. The sanctity of individuality. Every individual has intrinsic value. No one is here to be used as a means to another's end, and each person deserves the autonomy to live according to their own values. Personal accountability. Acknowledging personal responsibility for actions and outcomes leads to healthier, more fulfilling relationships and a stronger sense of self-worth. The role of external factors in shaping self-esteem. While our internal beliefs and practices are crucial for self-esteem, external factors such as the influence of parents, teachers, peers, and society also play a significant role. In the next section, the book will explore the ways in which external influences impact self-esteem and how we can navigate these forces to maintain a strong sense of self-worth. This comprehensive approach to understanding self-esteem highlights the importance of integrating both inner beliefs and outward actions to create a healthy and resilient sense of self-worth. Through conscious living, self-acceptance, and responsibility, individuals can cultivate the habits and convictions that support their personal growth and fulfillment. By understanding and embracing these principles, we can move closer to achieving our full potential and living a life aligned with our deepest values. Part 3. External influences, self and others. Chapter 13. Building a child's self-esteem. The primary goal of nurturing a child is to prepare them for independence and adulthood. A child begins life entirely dependent on others. If nurtured effectively, they gradually grow into an individual who can navigate life's challenges with confidence and enthusiasm. This development involves becoming self-supporting, not only in terms of finances but also intellectually and emotionally. At birth, an infant has no concept of personal identity or a sense of separateness, which comes only as they grow. The journey to selfhood is a critical part of human development, but it is also challenging as success is not always guaranteed. At each stage, the development process can be interrupted, frustrated, or blocked, causing the individual to become fragmented or emotionally stuck. In fact, many adults struggle with these developmental challenges, making it clear that the journey toward autonomy is a complex one. A valuable saying goes, "Effective parenting provides roots to grow and wings to fly." This highlights the importance of providing a solid base of security that gives a child the confidence to explore and eventually become independent. Children do not grow up isolated but within a broader social context. Much of their self-discovery and development into autonomous individuals happens through interactions with others. Early interactions shape how a child perceives themselves and the world. They can feel supported and accepted or rejected and diminished. They can experience a proper balance of protection and freedom or face excessive control that stunts their growth or, alternatively, too much freedom that leaves them feeling unsupported. As discussed in Honoring the Self, the goal of growing into autonomy is the ultimate aim of human maturation. This journey, however, is not without its challenges, and it is important to recognize that developing a strong sense of self is an ongoing process. The foundations of self-esteem. Psychologists have spent significant time researching self-esteem, particularly focusing on child-parent relationships. Stanley Coopersmith's pioneering study, The Antecedents of Self-Esteem, aimed to identify the parental behaviors most likely to foster high self-esteem in children. Through his research, Coopersmith discovered that factors like family wealth, education, or social class did not have a significant correlation with the development of healthy self-esteem. What mattered most was the quality of the relationship between a child and their caregivers. Coopersmith identified 5 key factors that foster high self-esteem in children. 1. Unconditional acceptance. The child feels fully accepted by their caregivers, not just for their actions, but for their thoughts, feelings, and intrinsic value. 2. Clear limits and expectations. Children thrive in environments where limits are set fairly and consistently. These limits help the child feel secure, knowing what is expected and how to meet those expectations. Parents should set high standards while believing in the child's ability to achieve them. 3. Respect for dignity. Children must be treated with respect. Parents should avoid using punitive discipline or humiliation to control their behavior. Instead, they should value their child's needs and engage in open, respectful discussions. A balance between authority and respect rather than authoritarianism is key. 4. High standards for behavior. Parents who hold high expectations in terms of behavior and performance challenge their children to do their best. These standards should be conveyed in a supportive, non-oppressive way. 5. Self-esteem of the parents. Children are more likely to develop high self-esteem when their parents model self-respect and self-efficacy. Children observe how their caregivers treat themselves and others, and these behaviors become lessons for the child. Coopersmith's study highlighted that there are no universal parental patterns that guarantee healthy self-esteem in all children. While parenting plays a crucial role, it is not the sole determinant. Other influences, such as teachers, extended family, or friends, can also be significant. Ultimately, individuals must take responsibility for their own development, making conscious choices throughout life that shape their identity and self-esteem. Good parenting, then, can make it easier for a child to learn essential life practices such as self-acceptance, self-responsibility, and self-assertiveness that support the development of a strong sense of self. By fostering an environment that encourages these behaviors, parents create the foundation for a child's emotional well-being. Basic safety and security. A child's earliest need is the provision of basic safety and security. This includes meeting their physiological needs, ensuring protection from harm, and creating a nurturing environment that allows them to feel safe. In this secure environment, the process of self-differentiation can unfold, allowing the child to build trust in themselves and others. A confident sense of boundaries and personal identity can begin to take shape. The need for safety continues to be critical as the child grows, including during adolescence. A chaotic or anxiety-ridden home environment can severely hinder normal emotional development. Long-term psychological effects from early trauma, such as experiences of fear or terror at the hands of parents or caregivers, can affect a person's sense of self throughout life. For example, adults with unresolved childhood trauma may experience intense anxiety that traces back to early life, when they felt helpless or terrified in response to chaotic environments or abusive behaviors. This kind of early terror makes it far harder to develop a strong, resilient sense of self, as it undermines the foundation of trust and security needed for healthy emotional growth. The importance of touch. Touch is an essential component of healthy childhood development. Studies have shown that touch helps stimulate the brain and promote emotional bonding, both of which are vital for growth. It conveys warmth, love, care, and comfort. Infants who lack physical contact can suffer severe emotional and developmental setbacks, sometimes leading to life-threatening conditions. Touch is a powerful way to express love, especially when children are too young to fully understand language. Touching a child communicates that they are valued and loved far more effectively than words alone. However, in cultures where physical touch is not common, particularly in the Western world, children may experience a form of emotional deprivation that leaves lasting effects on their self-esteem. When children are deprived of physical affection, they may carry a deep, unresolved longing throughout their lives. These feelings of inadequacy and unworthiness can manifest in different ways, either as a withdrawal from physical intimacy or as compulsive behaviors aimed at seeking touch in ways that can be self-destructive. Love is the foundation of self-esteem. Love plays a crucial role in a child's sense of worth. When children receive love from their caregivers, they internalize this love and grow up feeling lovable. Love is not only expressed through words but also through actions and through the joy caregivers show in the child's existence. Effective parenting involves conveying love while also setting boundaries or expressing disappointment without withdrawing affection. The child should always feel valued for who they are, regardless of their behavior. However, love becomes harmful when it is conditional, tied to performance or compliance with parental expectations. A child who receives the message that they are only lovable when they meet certain standards will struggle to develop a healthy sense of self-worth. The belief "I am not enough" becomes ingrained, undermining the child's ability to feel good about themselves. It's important to understand that "I am enough" doesn't mean "I am perfect" or "I have nothing more to learn." It means I accept myself as I am. True self-esteem can only grow from a foundation of self-acceptance, and parents play a crucial role in ensuring their children feel loved unconditionally as they are. Acceptance and emotional safety in childhood. When a child's emotions and thoughts are met with acceptance, they begin to internalize that response and, in turn, develop self-acceptance. It's important to clarify that acceptance doesn't necessarily mean agreeing with everything the child says or feels. Instead, it means acknowledging their experiences without judgment, listening with openness without lecturing, criticizing, or shaming. When children are constantly told things like, "Don't feel that way," or "That's wrong to feel," they learn to reject parts of themselves. They begin to suppress or deny natural emotions, whether that's joy, fear, anger, or curiosity, just to be accepted by their parents. Over time, this suppression can fracture the child's sense of self. They may begin to think, "If I want to be loved, I need to hide who I really am." True acceptance means embracing a child's temperament, interests, and personality even when those traits differ from the parents'. Maybe the child is introverted while the parent is outgoing. Or the parent is competitive but the child values collaboration. Accepting those differences without trying to fix the child fosters healthy self-esteem. The power of respect. Children learn self-respect by experiencing respect from the adults around them. Respect can be as simple as speaking to them with the same kindness and manners you'd show another adult. Think about it. If a guest spills a drink, we don't say, "Ugh, you're so clumsy." But parents often use that kind of language with children. Respect involves recognizing a child's dignity. Calling a child lazy, bad, or stupid doesn't just sting, it sticks. These words shape how children see themselves. Before labeling a child negatively, ask yourself, is this the self-image I want my child to carry through life? Teaching by example matters. A home where kindness and mutual respect are the norm becomes a place where children feel valued and they naturally mirror that behavior in the world. Even loving parents can forget this. For example, a grandfather might be spinning his granddaughter in fun, ignoring her plea to stop. If the child says, "You're not listening to me," and he apologizes and stops, he models respect for boundaries and teaches her that her voice matters. Psychological visibility, feeling seen and understood. One of the deepest needs children have is to feel visible. Psychological visibility means being noticed, understood, and acknowledged for who you truly are, not just for how you behave. Let's say a child expresses excitement and you respond with joy. Or they share sadness and you offer empathy. In these moments, they feel seen. But if they express happiness and get told, "Stop being so silly," or if they feel hurt and are accused of overreacting, they feel invisible, like their internal world doesn't matter. Feeling visible builds trust and connection. It tells the child, "You and I share the same emotional universe, I get you." Without this connection, relationships feel cold and disconnected. Visibility doesn't mean agreeing with everything, it means responding with understanding and presence. In fact, many adults carry deep wounds from feeling invisible in childhood. In therapy, clients say things like, "If I'd felt seen by my parents, I wouldn't feel so isolated today. Maybe I'd feel like I belong somewhere. I'd know who I was." Visibility isn't about flattery or praise. It's about acknowledging the child's reality. For instance, a parent hearing, "I didn't get the part in the play," might respond, "That must be disappointing," instead of, "You can't always get what you want." If a child is building something, instead of criticizing, a parent might say, "That looks challenging, but you're really sticking with it." These simple acknowledgments help a child feel emotionally anchored. Nurturing that matches a child's stage of development. Nurturing is essential, but it must evolve as the child grows. What works for a baby won't work for a teen. Dressing a toddler is necessary. Dressing a teenager would be infantilizing. Teaching a 6-year-old to tie their shoes is nurturing. Doing it for them every day is not. As children grow, nurturing becomes less about doing things for them and more about guiding them to do things for themselves. For example, instead of answering every question directly, a parent can say, "What do you think?" or "Let's look it up together." That shift encourages independent thinking. One powerful way to foster growth is by offering age-appropriate choices. You might not ask a 5-year-old if they want to wear a sweater, but you can offer a choice between two. This gives them agency within safe limits. When children are overprotected or micromanaged, they can grow up feeling helpless. One client, for instance, shared that at 26 years old, she was devastated after her husband left because she didn't even know how to buy groceries. Her mother and then her husband had always done it for her. She had never been taught how to function independently. The goal of parenting should always be to help children move toward autonomy. Encouraging small, developmentally appropriate choices early in life sets the foundation for confident, self-reliant adults. Understanding praise, criticism, and self-esteem in children, a guide for conscious parenting. Praise and its pitfalls. Many well-meaning parents believe that frequent praise is the key to building their child's self-esteem. However, not all praise is helpful. In fact, praise that is poorly given can undermine a child's confidence just as much as harsh criticism can. There's an important distinction between two types of praise: evaluative praise and appreciative or descriptive praise. Evaluative praise involves making value judgments such as "you're a good boy" or "you're amazing." While these comments may sound positive, they can inadvertently create pressure, dependency on approval, and fear of failure. Appreciative or descriptive praise, on the other hand, focuses on what the child did, not on who the child is. This kind of feedback encourages internal motivation and self-assessment rather than relying on external approval. Let's look at some examples. Examples of descriptive praise. A teacher might say to a student who organized the classroom books, "These books are now arranged in a way that makes them easy for others to find. It was a lot of work and you did it. Thank you." The child internalizes the feedback and concludes, "I did a great job. I can be organized and helpful." After a child writes a poem that resonates emotionally, a teacher could say, "Reading your poem reminded me of how I feel when winter arrives. You expressed it beautifully." The child might think, "My words matter. I can express feelings well." A child struggling with handwriting who finally produces a neat page might hear, "Your letters are so clear and easy to read. I enjoyed reading your work today." This leads the child to take pride in their effort and progress, not just the outcome. Why specific and honest praise matters. Generic compliments like "you're awesome" or "good job" leave children wondering exactly what they did right. When praise is too vague or too inflated, children may start to doubt it or feel like imposters. They might also become addicted to approval, constantly seeking validation rather than building true self-esteem. In contrast, praise grounded in observable facts and delivered without judgment supports a child's growth. It teaches them to reflect on their actions and feel proud of real accomplishments. The danger of overpraising. When parents offer excessive or indiscriminate praise, children may feel unseen. Instead of boosting self-worth, it can increase anxiety, especially if the praise doesn't align with how the child sees themselves. Some children begin to equate love with praise and struggle emotionally when it isn't given. This can lead to approval-seeking behavior and low resilience. To nurture healthy self-esteem, let the child be the one who evaluates their actions. Describe what they did and express appreciation sincerely but without judgment or pressure. The role of constructive criticism. Criticism, like praise, needs to be handled with care. It should focus on behavior, not on the child's identity or character. Effective criticism follows 3 basic steps. 1. Describe what happened, e.g., you hit your brother. 2. Express how you feel, e.g., I feel upset when someone gets hurt. 3. State what you want to see happen, e.g., next time, please use your words instead of your hands. What to avoid? Attacks on character like, you're so bad, you're always trouble, or you're just like your uncle. Sarcasm, ridicule, or shaming. Statements disguised as feelings but are really judgments, e.g., I feel like you're the worst kid ever. These approaches can damage a child's sense of worth and lead to defiant or withdrawn behavior. They may start believing they are inherently flawed, which can shape their identity and behavior in damaging ways. Children and expectations. Healthy development requires reasonable expectations. Children want and need to know what's expected of them. Parents who expect nothing unintentionally send the message that they don't believe in their child's potential. That said, expectations must be age-appropriate and tailored to the individual child. Holding a child to a standard that's too high or out of touch with their developmental stage can be just as harmful as having no expectations at all. Striking the balance between guidance and freedom is key. Learning from mistakes, a growth opportunity. Mistakes are part of the learning process. Every child, whether learning to walk, write, or manage emotions, will stumble and fall. If these mistakes are met with frustration, ridicule, or punishment, the child learns to fear failure rather than embrace growth. Parents who rush in to fix things or scold mistakes rob children of the chance to learn through experience. Worse, they may internalize a belief that they are unacceptable unless they are perfect. Instead, consider responses like, "That didn't go as planned. What might you do differently next time? What did you notice about how that worked out? I saw you kept trying even when it was tough." This encourages reflection and builds resilience. Healing the inner voice. Many adults struggle with harsh inner voices that echo their childhood experiences. They might say to themselves, "I'm such a failure. Why can't I do anything right? I'm just like my parents said I was stupid, lazy, or bad." These internalized messages often stem from how their mistakes were handled when they were young. Therapeutic practices such as completing reflective sentence stems can help rewire those patterns. For instance, when I make a mistake, I tell myself, if someone had told me it's okay to make mistakes, I would. As I learn to be more forgiving toward myself, I feel. These exercises bring awareness to the script we play in our minds and provide a powerful path toward healing. Recommended books for parents. For those looking to explore these ideas further, some timeless parenting books offer valuable tools and insights. Hayam Jinat, Between Parent and Child, Between Parent and Teenager, and Teacher and Child. Adele Faber and Elaine Maslish, How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk, Siblings Without Rivalry and Liberated Parents, Liberated Children. Dr. Thomas Gordon, Parent Effectiveness Training, A Practical Guide with Communication Techniques and Conflict Resolution Strategies. These books emphasize empathy, respect, and conscious communication while discouraging physical punishment or shame-based discipline. The fundamental need for psychological stability. One of the most essential truths about raising children is that they must be able to find coherence and meaning in their experiences. Children thrive when they believe that life is understandable and that the world around them operates with a degree of logic and order. When they perceive their surroundings as rational and stable, they are better equipped to develop confidence and a sense of personal effectiveness. Without this foundation, forming a healthy self-concept becomes extremely difficult. In many cases, children find physical reality, nature, machines, mathematics, more dependable than human interactions. When their social environment feels chaotic or unpredictable, they may gravitate towards systems that are consistent and comprehensible, finding a sense of control in those areas. Still, a stable and emotionally consistent home life, what we might call psychological sanity, is crucial for children's emotional growth. In this context, sanity means parents and caregivers who are emotionally steady, whose rules make sense and are applied fairly and consistently. It means being raised in an environment where the emotional climate is generally predictable, not marked by sudden outbursts of anger, anxiety, or joy that don't match the circumstances. It's a home where reality is acknowledged rather than denied, where behavior is guided by reason rather than confusion, and where children feel that what they observe is real and relevant. Sanity in a home also means that parents are emotionally honest. They apologize when they've made a mistake, communicate openly, and appeal to a child's understanding rather than manipulating with fear or guilt. They value a child's awareness and learning rather than suppressing it. If we hope to raise cooperative, responsible individuals, not merely obedient or conformist ones, we must create an environment that supports their developing mind. A family life that stifles critical thinking and emotional safety cannot produce mentally strong or self-confident people. The importance of structure. For a child's sense of safety and personal growth to flourish, there must be some form of organized framework in their lives. This structure refers to the family rules, spoken or unspoken, that dictate what is acceptable, how choices are made, and what is expected from each member of the household. A healthy family structure respects each member's individuality and intelligence. It encourages open dialogue, is flexible rather than rigid, and promotes collaboration over authoritarian control. In such an environment, guidance is offered through explanation, not demands. Trust replaces fear, and creativity and self-expression are welcomed. Parents in these families emphasize values that support independence and personal integrity. Most children are not looking for absolute freedom. Rather, they seek security through knowing that boundaries exist. They feel more secure when there are clear expectations and someone is clearly in charge. When parents abdicate leadership roles and refrain from setting any standards, believing it is more democratic to withhold judgment or direction, children often end up feeling adrift and anxious. As one young woman once said in therapy, "It's terrifying when no one seems to know what's right or wrong." When children are offered meaningful, rational values to live by, their self-respect grows. When no such values are present, or when values are contradictory or confusing, their self-worth suffers. Reclaiming connection through family rituals. Given the modern reality that many parents work long hours and have limited time with their children, one small but powerful habit can help preserve emotional connection. A weekly family dinner. This isn't about simply eating together. It's about creating a space for relaxed conversation and meaningful exchange. At this meal, every family member should be encouraged to share their experiences, thoughts, and feelings without fear of judgment. There should be no lecturing, no preaching, just mutual respect and attentive listening. While many parents support this idea in theory, practicing it well requires discipline. The temptation to correct or control can override the desire to connect. But when parents speak openly and respectfully and invite their children to do the same, it becomes a powerful ritual that reinforces emotional safety, belonging, and esteem. Understanding broader forms of child abuse. Physical and sexual abuse are widely recognized as devastating to a child's self-worth. However, emotional and psychological forms of abuse can be equally harmful and are often overlooked. A broader definition of child abuse includes actions that undermine a child's sense of self and safety. These include suggesting that a child is inherently flawed or inadequate, shaming or guilting them as a way to control behavior, humiliating them, mocking their feelings, or demeaning their experiences, overprotecting to the point of hindering independence or neglecting to protect them appropriately, creating an environment where rules are contradictory, oppressive, or constantly shifting, denying their perceptions of reality, causing them to doubt their own mind, using fear or violence to enforce compliance, treating children as objects or tools for parental gratification, instilling the belief that they are unworthy or inherently bad. Children exposed to these patterns often internalize the message that something is wrong with them. This belief can become a core wound, leading to self-doubt and shame that persist into adulthood. Reflection questions to understand your childhood and parenting style. Understanding how early experiences shaped one's self-esteem can offer insight into both personal healing and more conscious parenting. Here are key questions to reflect on. 1. Did your childhood environment feel consistent and predictable, or chaotic and confusing? 2. Were thinking and learning encouraged in your home? 3. Were you taught to obey or to think independently? 4. Could you express your thoughts freely without fear of punishment? 5. Were your feelings acknowledged or dismissed through sarcasm and ridicule? 6. Were your thoughts and preferences respected and taken seriously? 7. Did you feel truly seen and understood by your parents? 8. Did you feel loved and valued for who you were? 9. Were your parents fair and just in their treatment of you? 10. Was physical punishment used as a form of discipline? 11. Did your parents express belief in your potential? 12. Were you seen as capable and intelligent? 13. Were expectations placed on you appropriate to your abilities? 14. Did your parents make you feel guilty for being yourself? 15. Were you raised to avoid pain or seek values? 16. Was your privacy respected? 17. Was having self-esteem supported or discouraged? 18. Did your family offer an inspiring vision of life? 19. Were you taught to fear the world or to engage with it? 20. Were emotions welcomed or suppressed? 21. Were mistakes treated as learning opportunities or sources of shame? 22. Was a healthy attitude toward your body and sexuality encouraged? 23. Did you feel affirmed in your gender identity? 24. Were you treated as an individual or as a reflection of your family's image? The role of strategic detachment. Some children, despite facing difficult home lives, manage to survive emotionally intact by developing what can be called strategic detachment. This is not escapism or denial, it's a conscious or subconscious survival skill. These children intuitively understand that the dysfunction they see isn't representative of the whole world. They know there are healthier alternatives out there, even if they haven't found them yet. This inner conviction that better relationships and realities are possible helps protect their core sense of self. While they may still suffer, they are less likely to be permanently damaged. They preserve their hope and belief in a more rational, loving world. Parenting as a journey of growth. The ideas that support the development of self-esteem in children are also valuable for parents themselves. These aren't just lessons to teach, they're values to live. Whether in our work, our relationships, or parenting, we can use daily life as a platform for personal evolution. Raising children can be a spiritual and emotional practice. We don't need to pretend to be perfect. In fact, being honest about our struggles and owning our mistakes can be one of the most empowering gifts we offer our kids. If we choose to bring just a little more awareness, responsibility, self-acceptance, authenticity, and integrity into how we parent, our children will feel the difference. They will learn not just from our words, but from our way of being. And the bonus? As we help our children grow in self-respect and confidence, we deepen those qualities in ourselves. So those are the 6 pillars of self-esteem as outlined by Nathaniel Branden, 6 powerful practices that aren't just ideas, but habits you can build into your daily life. Remember, self-esteem isn't something you magically have, it's something you build one choice at a time. If this video helped you see things differently or gave you something to think about, do me a favor. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below with the pillar that resonated most with you. I'd love to hear where you are on your journey and what you're working on next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.